Hello and welcome back to the Goat Cave podcast. Today, episode 100. It has been a long road getting here, and it's been the best journey of my entire life. This has been such a rewarding experience, and our guest today is someone that I've wanted to talk to ever since I started this, and it is truly a privilege. Today's guest is one of the most influential BMX riders of all time. He and his riding have helped shape BMX into what it is today through some of the most well-known and respected video parts of all time. His well-rounded style and dedication to sending some of the gnarliest tricks ever done has earned him the title of legend in the industry. I am so excited to be speaking with the one and only Van Homan. Van, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today. Much appreciated.
Definitely. So, as we all know, 100 episodes in, we always start the same way. We go all the way back to when you first started riding. So tell us about how you got into BMX.
I'm going to apologize. I don't think I've ever listened or watched
one of your episodes.
Okay. I should be embarrassed. I actually looked at the list of guests that you had, and it's quite a star-studded lineup. So I really should go back and give some of these a listen for sure.
Definitely. Check it out if you are able to. There's quite a few awesome guests in there, including Mr. Brian Chikinski. I love Brian. That guy is such a unreal rider, and like his dedication and what he does on a bike is so wild, even to this day.
Yeah. Yes, amazing rider, great friend. Yes, highly respected in my world, Brian Chikinski. Yes,
definitely. So yeah, tell us about how you got started in BMX and what it was like back then.
Okay. If we're going all the way back to the beginning. Yeah, I just, I guess like most kids, I was 12 years old when I started riding, 1992, I guess it was. I actually, one of my friends, his older brother had some old magazines from like the mid 80s. And that was kind of like our first impression. So we just started like trying to jump curbs, and then we started building little jumps out in the woods. And actually kind of funny story about the magazines, because they were the only thing we had for maybe the first 6 months to a year that we were riding. So we would look at the bikes and the parts in this magazine, and we'd be like, I want this bike, I want that bike. But this magazine was 6 or 7 years old, from probably 1984, 85, and we're in like 92 now. So we're like sweating all the old 80s, like Mongoose, Super Goose, and all these things that are totally outdated by the time we got around. And then finally got, then I started to hear about, there was the local legend in town. His name was Danny Eckert, and he was a few years older than us, and he raced BMX. And there was a track about 30-minute drive from where I grew up in southern New Jersey. And the track was in Mullica Hill, New Jersey, the Mullica Hill Monster Track. And I kept bugging my dad, like, Dad, I want to go race. I want to go to the track. And actually, this is going to lead into a really good story to start things off, I think. So I was nagging him to go to the track, and he's like, okay, will you find all the details, and we'll go. We'll take you to the race. So I get the phone number for the track, and I start calling, but no one ever answers. And then on my lunch break at school, I would go to the payphone and put a quarter in and call the track and just get the answering machine. And I couldn't get anyone to answer to get the information that I needed. And then finally, maybe this went on for at least a week, if not a couple weeks. I finally call. I'm thinking like normal business hours, like one of these people. But what I came to find out is the only time this phone was in a trailer at the track. So the only time it ever got answered is when they were actually having a race, which was on Sunday afternoons. So finally someone answers the phone. I get how much it costs to get the license and what time and how the classes were. I get all the information, directions, give it to my dad. And he's like, okay, we're going to go. But my dad had come from a boat racing culture. He actually used to race boats. And so he really understood like the culture of like traveling and like all the nationals, and like just knew like how out of hand these things could get really quickly. So he was like, okay, we're going to go, but we're only going to Mullica Hill on Sundays. So I find that quote really sits with me, because like I'm sure we'll get into a lot of details later in the conversation, but that quote really sits with me, because then my life has turned into just traveling the world, riding BMX and working on BMX projects. And I found it amazing when I was doing some gates in Tokyo at the Olympic BMX track last year. I sent my dad a picture from the top of the start hill, and I was like, "Just Mullica Hill on Sunday, dad." Because here I am in Tokyo working on this project, and just like couldn't have went. Just Mullica Hill on Sundays couldn't have ended up being further from the reality that we both experienced. So, which he was fully supportive of. I mean, he said that in the beginning, but it only took a few months before we were going to Connecticut and North Carolina, and, races all over the place. So, yeah.
Dude, that's really rad. It's always really cool to talk to, people in the industry who have been around for, 20 plus years, because a lot of them have a similar story of how they got into BMX racing, right? I feel like most kids that get into BMX now probably are getting into freestyle, with racing being kind of secondary. And it's hilarious to hear just, Mulliga Hill only on Sundays, just because it's such a, I don't know, my dad and I, when I first got into BMX, we only rode on Sundays because that was the only day he came to visit. And he's a skateboarder, so he grew up with that. And, it was only BMX on Sundays, basically. I'd only see him on Sundays. So
any given Sunday, like you say.
There you go. Yeah, that's really rad, man. I loved hearing about, just you collecting the magazines and going through them all those years later too, right? Because when I got started, I remember going and grabbing a bunch of Dig BMX magazines from like a local bookstore, and they were so much older. Like they were out of date for sure, probably by like a year or so. So not as drastic, but I remember doing the same thing, right? You go through and you see the parts that are for sale in there. It was really cool.
What year did you start riding?
Only about 11 years ago. I'm only 25,
okay.
So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's been awesome though. Like, pretty much half my life of spending it on a bike, which is so cool, man. Like once I got started, it was, it took over my life basically. Like it was everything I think about, and even to this day still is.
Yeah.
Definitely. Did you mention what kind of bike you started with? That's always a question I like to ask.
So yeah, this is if you dig deep enough into some old props interviews or whatever, you might know this, but that there's I guess the first bike I really had that I started riding on was a Peregrine Performer, which I got even before I was into BMX. There was like a neighbor that had a dyno, and I remember we really like sweated his bike. Me and my sister, we were both young. I mean, this is like, I'm 6 years old. My sister's like 9 or something, and he was the cool kid. He could do wheelies, and like we wanted the dynos. And I guess my dad went into the shop looking for the dynos, and he found the Peregrines that were very similar, but I guess were actually nicer. Which at first we were kind of like, oh, we wanted the dyno, but then we got these bikes for Christmas when we were really young. And so anyway, won't dwell on that too much. When I started to actually ride, the stories I was telling you about when I was about 12, that was the bike I started on. Then I quickly traded a kid, I think, that frame for like an old Mongoose frame. And then when I started getting like more seriously in the BMX, like a year or two later, my dad actually, he bought me a Hawk F20, which is like a square aluminum tubed like bike. And it's pretty ugly bike. Like, I mean, it was light, and it was probably decent for racing, but pretty disgusting. And then after that, I rode like cyclecrafts for a few years, like in my race days. And being that you only ridden 11 years, I question if you even know a lot of the bikes that I'm describing right now. But Cyclecraft was like a huge New Jersey brand, which you may have like even heard stories about. Brian Foster used to like paint bikes at Cyclecraft and things like that. And then after Cyclecraft, I rode S&Ms for a while, like towards like the end of my racing days, when I finally started to figure things out, like what actually was cool and what I wanted. I ended up having like a Challenger, a red S&M Challenger that I raced on, and then I had a chrome S&M dirt bike that I rode trails and street on. And then I guess I rode a couple standards after that, and then I got on Schwinn, and then after that it's fit, and
it's been fit ever since.
So there's my bike history.
I love it.
Quickly.
I don't think you mentioned it, but what was your transition from racing to freestyle like? Was it kind of quick, or did it take you a while to really get into freestyle?
Yeah, I think that all happened pretty naturally, because we would, I think it's strange. I think it's a different era of BMX in general, where you kind of rode everything and whatever was available to you. So, I always describe it as we rode trails during the week because we weren't at the track. So we'd build jumps in the woods. And then at night we would ride street because we couldn't see the jumps. And on the weekends we would go race. And I think the dirt jump culture went hand in hand with racing at that time. There would always be a fly out jump or something next to the track that we'd all try to do tricks on. And then, I think that the whole dirt jumping thing was really starting to blow up in the early to mid 90s as well. So, that really kind of caught on. And I rode a lot of street in those early days, but at first I remember like putting pegs on my race bikes and just destroying things. Cause even freestyle bikes at that time weren't high quality. You had the 3/8 axles, and if you tried to grind a ledge, your pegs were going to be bent like that. And so I was trying to do this stuff on race bikes and just destroying things. And my dad would get so bummed. Then I think like it just all happened organically, just from going to the races and like meeting other people that were like I remember seeing Garrett Burns like at one of the local tracks with like an STA and like 2 pegs on it. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. That kid's cool. And like then talking to Garrett and becoming friends with him. And then I started going up to Tom's River to like, that's when I first started riding ramps, when they had like the ass skate park there in Tom's River. And, kind of started learning how to ride that type of stuff, like quarter pipes. Cause I didn't really I probably rode for like 4 years before I ever rode a quarter pipe. I just rode dirt and street, and that's all, because that's all we had. We didn't have any skate parks near us or any like ramps. I always had like small dirt jumps in my backyard and stuff. My dad let me like tear up the yard. But yeah.
That's really cool, man. And to hear like, your relationship with Garrett Burns and how it goes so far back is really cool, right? I love that era of BMX just because I feel like things were still kind of beginning and starting, right? Like, yes, like people had been riding for quite a while and things were kind of blossoming, but it's so cool to think about like how many people from that era are still riding today and then are big names in the industry as well.
No, I think that is something pretty special. I mean, I think, we didn't think much of it at the time, but, BMX was relatively young by comparison. If you think about it, I mean, like freestyle didn't really take off until the 80s, so like you really didn't have a whole lot of history at that point, even with racing. I mean, I know things kind of got going in the 60s, but really didn't pick up till the 70s. And it just, I don't know, it's comparatively till now, you have so much history. And when a kid starts riding BMX, like this has just been going on for a long time. And there really is like an in-depth history, and it's not just for kids anymore either. It's like, it has an older audience, and it has, people that like to still ride that are older, and I think that's like really, really kind of special. You still get that support for, some of the older pros and things like that. It's really like becoming more of just more deep rooted, and it's special to see, I think.
Definitely, man. Even this past weekend, I went to Joyride 150 with a few of my buddies, and my buddy Mike, who came with us, is 53 years old and was trying to do a wall tap on a post out of a quarter pipe and then back in. And like,
Mm.
it's just so cool to see, you know, I don't know. I love that within BMX, it seems like you kind of are determined to be a lifer by the age of like 20. Like if you're still doing it at 20, you're probably going to be doing it for a long time, you know?
Yeah. I think it shapes you too. I think like it's almost like corny saying, but like once a BMXer, always a BMXer. Like, you know, I have friends that maybe don't ride that often, but it's still like part of their identity. And, you know, they always have a bike and there's always a chance they're going to ride it at some point. And yeah, I think it really just does shape us, like our personalities as kids. And then that carries on through our entire lives.
Dude, I still have friends who haven't rode in years, and they send me photos of spots that they find. And like,
Yeah.
it's so funny that that never leaves, right? Like, once
Yeah.
you've done it, you kind of always are going to see life that way, right? Like, when you're just walking up a set of stairs, you're going to see like a gap, or you're going to see the rail next to it way differently than a normal person. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, you forever look at the world different. And that's funny because I just thought this recently because, you know, in recent years, I've really made a conscious decision, like where I've tamed down my riding drastically. You know, I still like to ride and I still like, you know, I think I ride at a reasonable level, but I'm not trying to push myself so far outside the comfort zone that I'm like, you know, really taking big risks and, you know, maybe the way I might have ridden in the past. And but I still see those kinds of setups. And sometimes I just want to like make a list or like take pictures of spots and have like a bounty, like, cause it doesn't need to be me that gets it done, but I just see something that like it used to be like, I can even remember being on trips, like even, you know, 10 years ago, we'd be on trips and I was even older at that point, you know? So I'm like, I'm trying to find excuses not to do things, but I would just see a setup and I would try to talk other people into doing it first. And then I'm like, well, this has to get done. Like this setup is too perfect. So if none of y'all are going to do it, I got to do it because this can't be left untouched. Like, so now I still have that mentality, but now I can walk away from it, but I still want someone else to like handle this business for me, if that makes sense.
Oh man, I love that. I have a whole separate page on Instagram that's just shared with my buddies, and it's just spot photos of like stuff that I find locally. And I do the same thing. I literally put like, this would be great for, you know, like a hard 180 off of, or, you know, this would be a great gap, like just stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's I don't know, you always see that. And it's kind of cool that like, I love the fact that you still see those setups, and like, I know for a fact, you know, the fire's still inside you. You still want to do that, but taming back is probably a smart decision, right? Like it's you've done your time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, you know, I knew for me, and you know, this is all relative, because I still feel like I'm riding and I still get that feeling and I, you know, push myself to a certain degree. But I think in 2016, when I filmed my Real BMX part, Real BMX X Games part, I really took some hard slams on that and like put myself through the ringer.
Definitely.
And after that was like, okay, that I knew in my head, like that's the last time I'm doing that, like putting myself on the line in to that degree in that manner for like a video part. You know, that's not to say I'm never going to do anything. I wasn't going to ever do anything cool or any type of riding that wasn't worth seeing or whatever. But I don't know. There's just that like highest level that I'm capable of, or that like highest level of risk that I'm willing to take was like over in 2000. I think it was 16 or 17. I was just like, okay, that's it. I'm proud of this part, and I'm lucky I survived it, and I'm through with that. And then, you know, then in 2008, I guess at the end of 2018 was when I like officially accepted and like recognized that like, okay, I'm not a professional bike rider anymore, and I don't want to be anymore. I don't like, you know, I still look at myself. I've been part of certain brands like Fit for so long that I'll always be be part of them. And I look at myself as more of an ambassador at this point. And, there's still things I'll do. Like I worked with my friends in Japan and just put out an edit last year, but it's just the stuff that I like to do that's not outside of my comfort zone. And, I think that's still something that I get excited about. It's still something that's worth seeing, but it's just toning down your level. And it's just interesting to like consciously make those decisions. It was a strange feeling for me, and it's still a little bit of a strange feeling because like how we talked about setups, it's like you used to see setups and be like, oh, maybe one day I'm going to get that, or I got to get back to that for the next project or whatever. And now like, it's like, I'll see something crazy and I'm like, I'm never going to do that. Like that. I want to see that get done, but I'm never going to do that because I've moved on to a different chapter, if that makes sense. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think, it comes time for everybody. Like Sean Mack was another one of my favorite riders that we've had on the show. And his Holy Fit section it's so crazy, man. There's so much stuff in there that's just mind boggling. Right. And nowadays it seems like his son is doing most of the crazy riding. I don't know if you've seen anything of his son, like riding dirt bikes. It's insane, dude.
Yeah, a little bit. See some stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Another rider that I can think of that kind of they toned down their riding, or they at least changed it quite a bit, is Alex Liv. He came on the show a little while ago, and just talking to him, right? Like when he was younger, he's one of the Bone Death boys, just sending stuff huge, like gaps all the time, and now he's always just doing 3 tables, riding dirt jumps, box jumps, like park riding mainly, which is really interesting to see, right? I don't think that like, it's tough to say, right? Like I think most BMX riders are going to have a point where they have to kind of slow it down a bit, or, other things become priority. And even myself, I've been experiencing that in the last couple of years, and I'm not even at the point that, I should be doing that. I think like, it's mainly just, worry of like, well, I've got bills to pay and whatnot and everything else. Like, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think you kind of like, kind of made my brain come to a good point. Like, I think something that's interesting too, is that, I liked that I like when riders kind of like are more diverse and like ride a little bit of everything, because like maybe some of the projects or the things that I'm better known for might be like my video parts, like my crazier street riding things. But I think to bridge that gap and to have like enjoy riding your bike for a long time and to have like a longer career, you needed to be able to do a little bit of everything, so if we went on a trip and did a shop stop, or we went to, whatever, you could ride anything that was put in front of you and have something to offer and have a good time as well. So I think I think that's important for like longevity too. And that's something that's like a little bit lost sometimes in like current riding, is that like everybody's so specialized now, which I understand, because I think everything is such a high level now that it's hard to excel at everything. But I do think that's kind of special when you can have something to offer, like regardless of where you go, and you can enjoy yourself regardless of where you go. I think
Definitely.
that translates even into like regular life. It's like I like to be able to like participate in whatever it is that's happening, whether it's like playing music. I might not be good at it, but I can do it a little bit. Skateboarding, I might not be good at it, but I'll join the session. Snowboarding, whatever, whatever it is, like the more outlets you have, like the more fun and the more participation you can have like in life, and make it more fun.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, just doing that, like my buddy Mike, he pretty much only rides bowls at this point. He doesn't like riding streets or dirt jumps just because it's kind of out of his comfort zone, and he wants to keep that longevity, right? He's 53, and to keep riding, he's kind of got his thing, right? And I gotta be honest, man, even the stuff that he's doing, I'm like, holy shit. Like this dude is, he rides one of the gnarliest bowls that we have in Ontario, which is just like so crazy, man. He's a shredder.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
It's awesome. I love to see it.
Yeah, I wanted to jump back here for a minute and talk about Schwinn. So back in 1998, you got picked up by Schwinn and would later on get your own signature frame called the Mean Street. How did your
Yes.
sponsorship with them come along? And when it was finally time for your frame, how much control did you have over the design and whatnot?
Um, so the way that I ended up getting on Schwinn was so speaking like I mentioned earlier, like I was going to a lot of races and things. So at some point, traveling to these races, like we go to South Park and things like that, and they would have dirt jump contests. And I started to enter the dirt jump contest, and I didn't know at that time, but John Paul Rogers, who is like, if you go back far enough, is like a legendary like S&M rider, and then like blew out his knee, and then at this time he was the team manager for Schwinn. And I guess he had like had his eye on me for a few years, but I was just kind of a loose cannon kid, just entering dirt jump comps and hucking stuff. And over the years, I'd like kind of went from that, just kind of hucking stuff, to kind of getting more refined. And I think it was like maybe the end of '97. Yeah, I think it was the end of '97, the Christmas Classic in Columbus, Ohio. I I entered, like, at that time was like one of the biggest and like the highest level of entries. Um, and I think it was like almost 100 entries. Actually, this is like the Chris Doyle like came up at this same event. Like we both kind of got our like big break, so to speak, at this event. And I'll backtrack on that in a minute. But so yeah, I rode really well. I qualified first and got fifth out of like 100, almost 100 pros. And after that event, John Paul came up to me and says, "Hey, do you want to ride for Schwinn?" And I was like I was actually a little bit reluctant because I was kind of like at Standard at the time was like the cool club, and like I like wanted to be like teammates with all those guys. And that wasn't even necessarily on the table at the time. Like I just like uh, without getting off on a whole nother story, but I'd just been given a frame from them in a bizarre kind of way. But anyway, at the Christmas Classic, after doing well, John Paul asked me to ride for Schwinn. They'd cover all my travel, equipment, that kind of thing. So that's how that ball got rolling. And like I said, ironically, like Chris Doyle at the same event, like DK had like paid to help him out and go to that event. He did really well too. So after that, we were both like on the path to like a new life of like traveling and living the BMX dream. So, and then um, I guess with the frame, then I rode Joey Garcia's frame for a couple years, the El Jefe. And then they asked me if I wanted to have a signature frame. And I actually had a lot of influence on the design because I was a pretty stubborn kid at the time. So they were telling me that there was a lot of things they wanted to do, like they wanted the seat stays to have the curve. They were like, "Oh, that's a Schwinn trademark," and the chain stays had the curve like Schwinn signature. But like long story short, they wanted to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and I kind of stood my ground because I was a stubborn kid and I didn't really care if they didn't like it. I was like, at one point, I think I even told them like, "Hey, then I don't want to frame. I'm good. Like if you're not going to let me do it the way I want to do it, then I don't want it." And which, I think, I don't know, like part of me is proud of that. And part of me thinks like I was just stubborn, I wasn't willing to compromise because I was young. But I'm happy that it worked out that way at this point. But and I remember I wanted it made in the USA. So like Dave from like Pedal Driven Cycles, he actually like made all my frames at that time. I think at one point he was doing some FBM frames and things like that. But yeah, all the frames were like made in the USA, but it was a relatively limited run because I think, and they sold way quicker than they expected. I know at the time a lot of their like high end frames were just done as like kind of a symbol of quality. Like what they actually made their money on was was the complete bikes and things like that. And I don't think they even made a profit or even ever really sold out of the high end frames. They just did it to show that standard of quality and to have something for their pros to ride. And the Mean Street did really well. And I think they were surprised by that because a lot of the bikes they'd done in the past hadn't. And the first batch sold out really quick. And then they were doing a second run. And then the company in general was having big struggles. So in general, which goes, I laugh because at one point I've heard people be like, oh, Van ran Schwinn out of business with the Mean Street cease and desist. And I just laughed because anything that was happening in BMX was just like a small blip on the radar to what was happening at Schwinn Cycling and Fitness. I mean, this was a massive company at one point, just selling exercise bikes and mountain just cycling everything. So
definitely. I think it's funny when people kind of look at brands like that are so huge and globally known, and if they're involved in BMX and then they stop, they kind of look at it a little strange, right? Like one of the ones that I actually kind of miss was Nike 6.0. Like, they did so many cool contests in the late 2000s, and it is weird that they just kind of dropped their BMX team all at once, But I think that's just another thing of like people saying, oh, BMX ran them into the ground. It's like, no, they didn't. It's Nike. They just weren't making a profit and needed to, focus elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's surprising for me to hear. Like if anybody thinks that BMX ran anything to do with Nike into the ground, I think, for me personally, like my perspective, I look at those bigger companies, if coming into things and, they create opportunities, but you can't expect them to be around forever either. It's like, I think those things are, I think it's good when this money comes in, if you take it for what it is. And, I think that's great. They supported a lot of events and a lot of riders for 10 plus years, and then it went away, which is a bummer, but
it's better than them not being there at all. The alternative is that all these people didn't get the opportunities that they did. We didn't get some of the cool contests that we had, like the Nike pool or the Nike tunnel, stuff like that. Like that stuff never would have existed had it not been, a thing at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I see it. You take the opportunities while they're there. I mean, obviously with that, there comes some level of dignity, I think, but in what you're willing to compromise. But I think overall, there's a lot of things that come and go that the industry and the riders themselves should take advantage of if they can.
Definitely. So, going back to 2001 here, obviously you had just gotten the Mean Street frame from Schwinn, and then later on in that year, you had actually joined Fit. And at the time, Fit was a brand new company. They had barely been a year old, and they had already started taking the BMX world by storm. Obviously, they had riders like Mike Aiken and Brian Foster joining the team, and that's a huge thing, right? Like people are going to see that for sure. But how did you first hear about Fit? And at the time, did you have any worries about, joining a team that had been just kind of starting out, right? This is a brand new company. It's only a year old, if that.
Right. So what happened was, I'd been riding for Schwinn. I actually had torn my ACL. So I had torn my ACL like just before Criminal Mischief came out. So I think I was on crutches I helped kind of with filming in the final stages of Criminal Mischief. And then Derek finished up the video, and I think I was on crutches at the premiere. And then like during this time period, a lot of funny stuff was starting to happen with Schwinn. Like people were being very elusive. I couldn't get in touch with anybody. I wasn't getting clear answers or information about anything that was happening. And so I was kind of getting fed up, and I had always kind of wanted to ride for a more like core rider owned company anyway. So I I was in Long Island, and I got talking to Robbie Morales, and we got talking about me being on Fit, so I actually called Schwinn, maybe this guy Jeff Schaefer, I believe, or I forget who I was speaking with at that time, but I called and I said, hey, like, I'm what's going on over there? I'm kind of getting the runaround. I don't know what's happening. Like, is it possible to like get out of my contract? And I want to explore other options. I want to ride for Fit. And which, going back even further, another motivation was, I'll make this a long story short, but there was one point where, so Brian Wismerski was on Schwinn, and he was one of my really good friends. And I had a contract, and in the time that I had signed my contract, very quickly, I kind of blew up a bit. I won Nora Cup, and like, I went from being a relatively unknown up and comer to like, having a signature frame and, having a bigger name in BMX. So I asked them if I could renegotiate my contract. And they were like, well, we can renegotiate, but you need to sign for 3 years, which I was fine with. And like, then they kind of alluded to like, oh, well, and we'll probably have to cut like Wismerski and do some other things, like, and I was like, wait, I was like, is this a strategy? Like, are you trying to mess with me, or are you that dumb that you think I would just be like, oh, you have to cut one of my good friends to give me a raise? Like, cool. Like, I'm not going to. So I was like, never mind. Like, I don't want to re-sign. I'm going to just like ride out this contract and explore my options at the end of the year. So that was like one thing that had happened. And then from that point, things started to get bizarre anyway. So again, I had that conversation, and they kind of just were like, all right, we'll get back to you. I didn't hear anything for a while. I was kind of laid up anyway, just nursing a bad knee, trying to heal up. And then a few months later, I finally get a call, and they're like, hey, Dan, like, you're the first person we're calling with this news, because you're the only one that's not going to be insanely disappointed to hear it. Like, Schwinn's actually in a bad way with the filing Chapter 11. The contracts are void. You're free to ride for Fit. So then it was on. So then I talked to Robbie and Chris, and we worked out a deal that at the end of the year I was going to Fit. So I just started getting back on my bike. So I built up a bike, and we shot a NAD, and welcome to the team. So the company had only been around, like you said, for about a year, but it was something I really wanted to be part of. Like you said, it was like Mike Aiken and Brian Foster. And then, I knew that like S&M was behind it. So even though it was a new company, it was like, I knew it was people that knew how to make bikes, and it was people that knew how to run a business, and it was credible. So, I was just pumped to be a part of it, and Robbie's a genius hype man. So he had everybody on the team, that's still how he runs his stuff today. He gets everybody stoked, so yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I was all in, like, let's do it. So,
oh man, that's really rad. Yeah. And even back then, right, like I was saying, like the first year Fit really was blowing up because they had all the best dudes at the time, right? And it's definitely part of what Robbo does, right? It's he does it even today, like you mentioned. And I think the cool thing about Fit is that over the past 21 years, they have had some of the most talented BMX riders in the world on the team, right? Even to this day, yourself, Mike Aiken, and Brian Foster are still there 21 years later. Being a pro for as long as you have, you get a lot of signature products, right? You've had so many things through Fit, countless, parts, colorways, and frames and whatnot, even bikes, right? Over the years, what have been some of your favorites?
Wow.
It's a tough question, because there's so many things, like all these parts and all these colorways, bikes, frames, everything is so close to you, right? It's all part of you in a way. It's hard to pick your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, the Mean Street was one of the first things, and I think like the graphics on that, like the Van Halen inspired graphics that Derek Adams did, like that was a pretty special thing and a pretty special project. And then I think also like some of my signature shoes with Orchid, especially. I mean, I had a signature shoe with Airwalk, but I think we really like refined it, and I really had the shoe that I wanted when I was able to work with Orchid on that. So the shoes were good. And then, I think with Fit, when we started to have complete bikes, that was a really awesome opportunity to be able to kind of model those bikes after what you were riding and your colorways and your stickers. And, that just kind of felt like you made it. You got a complete bike line with your name on it. And, I think that was pretty special. So, like you said, I think there's a lot of things out there, but those for sure are some of the highlights, I guess.
Definitely. When it comes to complete bikes, I always feel like it's such a special thing for riders. They are riding a frame, and their whole bike setup is a certain color and everything, and then next year those kids can go out and buy that, right? Like, I know for myself, getting into BMX 11, 12 years ago, Aaron Ross was huge at the time, not to say that he isn't today, but those Sunday bikes, man, with his, kind of like his touch to it with the picnic bike, right, with the green, the pink, and the bright orange, all those bikes are kind of like something that I want to collect now, right? It's funny how I have friends who collect, old school or mid school bikes, and what I'm looking for is like, a mint condition orange Fun Day. Like, it's such a strange thing, but I think it kind of comes from that era,
Absolutely, man. And that's what's like so special about it. I mean, those bikes really do say Aaron Ross. Like, you feel his spirit when you see those bikes and those colorways. And then, like you said, it blows my mind because, I remember when Aaron was like, it felt like Aaron was the new guy, like he was like the new kid that was like, he was doing it, and he had the bright bikes and the pizza t-shirts and the whole thing. And like, now Aaron's a veteran, and he's like like you said, like it's getting to the point where his bikes and his things are collector's items now. And it's that really dates you, that makes you feel old when it's like even like a lot of my friends, like the guys who are just the younger generation are starting to be in their like mid 30s or 40s now. And you're like, wow, I'm getting up there.
Definitely. In the intro, I mentioned that you have come out with some of the most well-respected BMX video parts of all time. And honestly, the list just goes on and on and on with how many you've had. Seek and Destroy, Criminal Mischief, Holy Fit, even your parts in Trailblazing and your 2x4 section. Dude, they, there's so many like awesome videos that you've been a part of. And I'd love to hear some backstory. So first up, Seek and Destroy has a special place in my heart, and that's because I'm from Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, and you have 2 clips in that video from Kitchener.
Oh my God. Kitchener.
Dude, and
I got more crazy stories from Kitchener than you think I should have.
Oh man, I'd love to hear them. One of the things that has always been rumored, and I think it's in the video, I was trying to find the clip earlier, but my local park that I absolutely love going to, the Auditorium, it's just this crappy bowl. There's a little pyramid, some really weird humps, like some camel hump things, and then there's a whole like quarter pipe and everything in the back. But there was a rumor that you had hopped over the bowl, the shallow end of it, and I'm pretty sure I've seen the footage of it. I cannot remember specifically though. I don't know if you'd remember that.
You're going back to like 1997 with this. Like I don't even remember the park or the bowl that you're talking about at this moment. I really
no, that's okay.
Recollection.
Yeah.
Is it like in the credits of Seek and Destroy?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. It's not in your video part. Your video part, you have a trick on a sub rail, like it's a bank to sub rail. I think you ice pick it, and then
Oh yeah, yeah, I know that one. Yep, I know the
yep,
one.
that's Cortland School, and that has always been such a unique, like famous spot for us. You know, John Heaton is pretty local, and he did a toothpick on it. There's been so many other
Yeah.
pros who have played around on that rail, and then there's another clip towards the end where you do a gap to manual down a double set rail, basically. I don't know if you would remember the exact one. I'll pull it up here in a second.
Oh, I do, I do. And then Garrett has a clip too, like where he gapped to manuals, like the sawhorse, like the wooden sawhorse.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that was in Kitchener too.
Yeah, there's a clip of oh my god, I'm forgetting their name, but they jumped over a picnic table out of that same bowl that I was talking about earlier. And then there's a clip of I think it's Pat where he does a manual down the city hall steps. They're just
Yeah,
really
I
long
remember
steps.
those.
Yeah, a
I
buddy
remember
of
that one,
mine,
yeah.
he always mixes that up. He always thinks that you were the person doing the manual down the step.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there was footage anywhere. We might have been all playing around that day or something, but I can't. Yeah, I can't recall if
Yeah, all
that was
good.
ever hard to remember. But yeah, that was that trip was an adventure, man. Like, so we took that whole trip was to film for Seek and Destroy, and we're talking 96 or 97, or is that right?
I
Somewhere in
believe
there.
so, yeah.
Maybe 98, because actually it could have been 98. I don't know. Anyway, long time ago, pre cell phone era. So I'll give you a few good stories from that. The first one is like, we took my friend's van, my friend Trey's mom's van, and it was pretty kitted out, but it was old, and it ended up breaking down. And we went to like a rest stop, or not a rest stop, like a mechanic's shop to see if we could get the van fixed. And he tells us, go to this other shop. So we get in the van, we go to the next spot, and then this is kind of silly, but Chris Stauffer was on that trip, and everybody called him Stauffer. And we get to the next spot, and we're all just hanging out, waiting to see what they can do with the van. And then someone on the phone at the shop, again, pre-cell phone era, like he's like, "Hey, your friend Chris is on the phone." Like, we're like, "You left him." Like, we're like, "Chris? Who is Chris?" Like, no, we're like, "Oh, Stauffer." We're like, "Oh shit, we left him at the other shop." Like, so we had like totally left him at the other mechanic shop. So like, I mean, just silly stuff. But then, so that's just a silly story. But then we get up to Kitchener, which this could be like, so I'm sure this guy's a great guy now. We were probably dickhead kids. But the guy who ran the distribution up there in Kitchener,
Ryder.
So it's weird because I know a lot of people like him, so I don't want to talk trash on him. And we were probably rowdy assholes, so he was probably like nervous about us. But we pulled up in this van, and I remember he would like not let us in his house at all. Like he made us like stay outside. He kind of sold us like he had this like kitted out basement. That was like, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna set it up. It's gonna have a PlayStation. You guys are gonna have beds and blah blah blah." We're like, "Cool, let's do it." So we get there, and it's just this like musty, like moldy basement, like with nothing in it. Like we're just like, "Oh, like sleep in the van or throw your sleeping bags down." And like, so we're kind of like a little bit bent about that. And then, man, I'm all over the place with these stories. But then, and this is where I'm like, we're like, probably we're just asshole kids, and he didn't want us in his house. I like didn't get it then, but I kind of get it now. We go down the road to like the store to get drinks or whatever, and for the life of me, this is so long ago, I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was this group of kids like hanging out there, and they were kind of giving us a hard time coming out of the store, but we all just like sort of ignored them and like kept walking. And then like as we get like pretty far away, 50 to 100 yards away, one of them screams something at us, and Garrett just, I don't know, he just hucks a Snapple bottle across the entire parking lot, and it just lands like right next to these guys, these people that I don't want to have confrontation with, but now we're a bit forced. So I start running. This whole group of people starts chasing me. I run the wrong direction. Garrett and Marvin Latterly, maybe Pat Juleff was with them. Maybe it was Garrett and Pat. Marvin was back at the van because he later gets in a fight with a pregnant woman. So, so like I run, and I'm just like running. And like at one point, I think I lost these guys, and they're like, I just look back and like, why you running, pussy? And I'm like, so I just start running again. But like, eventually I find my way back to the house. And when I get back to the house, there's this whole scene going on because these guys have followed Garrett and Pat back to the house. And like, I don't know, like they're just like looking to get into it. They like say they want to meet at some parking lot, like as if we're in like high school, like they want to meet in some parking lot the next day to have this like fight or brawl. I'm pretty sure that like Marvin Latterly may or may not have slapped a pregnant girl, which obviously is a terrible thing. But like, I'm pretty sure that happened. Like she was like got in his face, and he was, yeah, not a good person.
He Will Smithed her.
yeah. But it was a scene. It was a scene. So like, then we just leave town, and now these people just know where John lives, you know. And like, to make matters worse, I'm pretty sure one of the crew was so pissed at like John for different things that they left him an upper decker in the toilet. So
oh my God, that's amazing.
I'm just making ourselves look like terrible people, like we're just asshole kids. And yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
and
man.
I'm not a good storyteller. I'm not a great storyteller sometimes. So I feel like these stories could be told so much better. But
I will be completely honest with you.
Adventures.
I think a lot of people have had very similar experiences with John from Ryder. I'm not going to say any names, but you know, this is not the first time, and this is definitely not the last that I've heard about weird experiences with Johnny. You know.
Yeah, I'm really trying not to talk shit because I think,
no, of course not.
I think he's done a lot for the BMX scene. I've heard a lot of good things for him, and we were rowdy, idiotic kids. So I mean, I can sympathize somewhat in my older years. So
I agree.
No hard feelings.
Yeah, I think that's just the nature of BMX, though. You know, especially back then, is that BMX is just rowdy. People are gonna be nuts, right? It's funny. I had a guest on who basically said, you know, if you ride BMX, you're kind of a kook. Like anybody who does this, who nerds out on just like, you know, doing tricks and whatnot on a bike, is, you know, they're a little different. And I like that.
No, absolutely. No, we're nerds for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Oh man.
You know, I think it's like interesting to maybe see or hear like someone from your perspective, because like, you know, like a lot of these people are at this point like my peers or my friends. Like I've known Daryl Null since he was 14 years old, and now he's like such a massive like BMX personality, you know. And it's like, so it's kind of like weird. It's almost like celebrities of BMX, where like this is just your world and it just happened naturally, and these people are just your friends. And like, but to someone from a different perspective of BMX, it's like, it's kind of like, holy shit, like all these people, like, you know, you were part of this, you know. Like I guess that's the thing. We all got.
A moment ago we were talking about Kitchener and you know, everything that kind of happened there for you guys. And Kitchener is just such a I don't know, it's such a weird spot for me because I love it and I've lived here for so long, and the history within BMX is so deep rooted here. I don't know if you knew, but Matt Hoffman landed the first 900 in Kitchener. And then, you know, we had
dropped the upper decker.
They did. Oh man. But yeah, there's Kitchener just has such a history with BMX, and it's really cool. I think some of that has to do with John Heaton, who is a local pro. John was unreal in his day, and even to this day, when I do see him at the park once in a while, he still kills it. He's still flowing around. I don't know if you know, but John is a police officer now.
I actually was just going to say that I just recently saw a clip of John grabbing some kid's bike at the skate park, fully in his cop uniform, full kit, doing a tailwhip fly out of one of the bowls, and that was pretty cool. Like that's yeah, those special moments, like when you see the cop like grab a board and do a kickflip, and the kid's like, wow. So that was cool.
Yeah, that he showed up that day with his bike, with his boots on, with everything. I think he had the bike in his cop car and like pulled it out of the back seat, came in, did the whip out of the bowl at the odd. Yeah, it's so wild, man, just to see him and everything that he's done within BMX. And, we have our local legends around here too. And it's always been a really cool city for BMX.
Nah, that's great. Yeah, John's amazing, and that's awesome. I didn't know that first 900 was in Kitchener. That's pretty epic thing to have on your hometown's resume. Absolutely. So yeah, and John, I mean, we're from the same era, so we've competed a lot together, been on trips together, and yeah, I love John Heaton's amazing. Like, he's actually one of those people that I haven't seen or thought about in a long time, and that's like, there's certain people you stay in touch with often, and you're like kind of on the same trajectory with, like, as far as like the events you're going to or the jobs you're working, and then someone like that you kind of just lose touch with, and so yeah.
I think John is trying to kind of space himself from the BMX world. That's kind of something that's in his past, and he's okay not being as involved. I get asked weekly to have John on the show, and I've reached out countless times, and I feel like he's always kind of avoiding me in that way, and that's okay. I think it's totally fine if he's not interested in coming on, and it would be really cool to chat with him, but I totally agree with his mentality nowadays, and I think that him protecting his job and his like livelihood in a way, and kind of transitioning from what he was to what he is now, is really cool. And
that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about like the maybe what you might say or think on like, or that connection as far as a police officer might be I don't know, but I mean, I could certainly understand, even from my perspective. Like, I'm still very involved in BMX, but even like you asked me a couple years ago to do this, and I kind of like, having moved on from being like a professional BMXer, I felt like, what, I don't know if I really want to talk for a few hours about all these things, and I don't have to anymore. It's like, it's kind of like I can focus on the things that I'm trying to accomplish, and you can do that behind the scenes and not have to be like in the spotlight, and I think another reason that I didn't want to do it at that time was, I felt like, now that we're having these conversations, we're talking a lot more about the history and old stories. It makes a little more sense, but I think I felt like pressure too. Like, I had been kind of like thrust into that Olympic job and planning, and I felt like a lot of people wanted to talk about the details of that, but I felt like I hadn't really accomplished anything yet. All I had accomplished was getting the job, and I didn't want to really talk about that until I could say I succeeded at that. So like, I think that was like a lot of like things like this I was putting off until I could say like, yeah, that happened and it was a success and I'm proud of it, and we're on to the next thing now, if that makes sense. Maybe I was just nervous. Maybe I just felt a lot of pressure, so I didn't want to like build a lot of hype around something that I hadn't succeeded at yet.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, even back then when I did message you, like, totally respected the fact that, you wanted to kind of stay away from that and stay away from doing podcasts and whatnot. And It's one of those things that, like, doing this, you know, there's a lot of people that I really want to chat with and a lot of people that I want to hear their stories, but you know, if they don't really want to do it, then I don't want to make them do it. You know what I mean? With everything that you were saying about Japan and whatnot, it's really cool what you got to do with the Olympics. And I think that everything that has happened in the last few years with the Olympics and everything that we've gone through with COVID and everything, it's really cool that you were able to push through everything. And, you know, you lived in a different country that speaks a different language for 3 years and managed to do something that, you know, not a lot of people are able to do. You got to work so closely on creating a new Olympic sport, essentially.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute honor, and to be able to have that opportunity to live over there. And I mean, it was to be able to entirely like relocate somewhere. Like, I've traveled most of my life, but to have the opportunity to actually relocate and be part of the scene and the culture, and, you know, make a life over there, you know, to make friends and have a routine. And it was pretty awesome. You know, I really love Japan. I really love Japan. I made so many good, like, lifelong friends, and, you know, we had such a great team working on the project over there that it was like, you know, like family for sure, forever. And I think we got to share like something really special over there. So it's like, yeah, unbelievable opportunity for sure.
Definitely. Japan has always been one of those things that, you know, I have to go there. It's on my bucket list. I've always loved Japan and just everything about it. And, you know, it's so cool to just see a part of this world that feels so different, you know, from North America. And myself, I've only ever traveled in Canada. I would love to leave the country and do everything, and it's going to happen in the next, you know, little while. I'm very excited to make those journeys and whatnot. And Japan is, I just have always loved their culture and just everything that, you know, is over there. And I've always wanted to visit. But for you, what kind of ended up happening with the Olympics? How did you get involved? Because it's such a different opportunity, right? We all have thought about BMX in the Olympics probably for 20 years. And then it finally comes around, and no one else than yourself is better for the job, I think. I think that everything that happened and everything that you did for it and how well respected you are in BMX, we all knew and trusted that the, like, BMX being in the Olympics was a good thing.
No, I mean, thank you. I absolutely, I appreciate that, you saying that. And, you know, I'm very happy. As I mentioned earlier, I was very scared, but I think, like, I'm very happy to say now that I think we absolutely did a great job, and everything was a success. I mean, it's certainly not all to the credit of us. There was a lot of people involved in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I mean, as far as my backstory on that, so what had happened was, you know, so for any cycling sport to potentially be in the Olympics, it has to first be under the UCI umbrella. And so that happened. What year did that happen? I forget exactly what year, but that happened. And then the path towards the Olympics started to take place, which, you know, actually is pretty phenomenal, because a lot of sports have been trying to get into the Olympics for a really, really long time. And, you know, I found it really interesting, because going back to in Montpellier one year during one of the World Cups, some members from the from the IOC came to watch the event to sort of make the decision whether or not BMX was going to be in the Olympics. And I think in a lot of our minds, and at the time I wasn't even really thinking that hard about it. I was there to judge the event. You know, cool, if BMX is in the Olympics, awesome. But I didn't really have a huge stake in it. You know, I was just like, yeah, that'd be rad, but whatever. You know, I'm here to have fun and do my job and whatever. So, But I think I'd counted those chickens before they hatched. I was like, oh yeah, if those people are here, it's probably getting in the Olympics, right? But I had heard later that those people from the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they went to the event, but they were thinking the complete opposite. They were thinking that BMX freestyle was not getting in the Olympics. They had another sport, maybe it was like even parkour or something like that they were thinking about putting in. And they went there. And if you've ever been to Montpellier, I mean, it is pretty mesmerizing. Like when you see those finals happen and you have that crowd of people just sitting on the banks, people losing their minds. It's Europe, so people are drinking, they're screaming, they're yelling. Like it's awesome. It's a party. I mean, like Feast Montpellier is like no other, you know? And then on top of that, I think like from what I've heard anyway, is like Ryan Nyquist and Nina like had talks with the people from the IOC, and they really like spoke well to them and really just sold the idea to them. And so I think between talking to Nina and Ryan, on top of actually witnessing the event in person, they were just sold, you know, and they were like, we've got to do this. This is surreal. We've got to put this in. So there it was. Next thing you know, like that was one of the last events to get into the Olympics. Like, relatively, like it got in really late in the process, you know, like it was only like a couple years before, or maybe 3 years or something before, but it was late in the process. Typically things are put in much earlier than BMX freestyle was put in. So pretty cool. And then I guess to answer your question more specifically, my involvement happened because I had been judging like a lot of the UCI World Cups. And then also when the UCI brought freestyle under their umbrella, I was doing a lot of consulting. So just things about the judging formats and the formats in general. So like the judging criteria and the formats, like how the event should be structured, like things like that. I was kind of like speaking with them and consulting with them a lot, especially concerning the judging. So fast forward, I'd had a handful of meetings with them, and you know, Bart de Jong threw my name out to one of the members of the UCI, saying like, hey, I think he'd be a good guy to send to Japan. And at first they weren't sure. And then I had another meeting and I went, and after that, I guess, like, I didn't even know I was in the running at this time, but apparently I made a solid impression because they were like, you know what? I think Bart, I think you're right. I think he'd be good. You know, he asked all the right questions. We really appreciated his input. And next thing you know, I get a phone call saying, hey, can't guarantee it right now, but if there was an opportunity to move to Japan for a couple of years, would you be into it? And I said, yeah. I was like, let's do it. I need to hear more details about the job, but I'm like, as long as the salary is acceptable, like as long as it's, I don't, you know, a living wage, I'm in, you know? So, and the rest is history. So I guess, and to clarify like what my role was exactly there, because a lot of people are confused. They think I was there to be a coach or to like work for the Japan Cycling Federation in some regard, which isn't true. I was working for Tokyo 2020, which is the organizing committee of the Olympic Games. So essentially I was in charge of like organizing a lot of the logistics and the layout of the venue, you know, making sure the team cabins were set up properly, making sure there was food and beverage, making sure that where press would go, where the position of the judge tower would be, where the interviews would take place after the riders rode. Like, you know, we'd have to procure tents and coolers and fans, and you know, there's just 101 things that we had to do. So but it was event organizing, you know, event management is what our team was working on. So yeah, it was, like I said, like a lot of logistical type of things. And I think, you know, I think one of the coolest things and surprising things, I mean, when I got there, I had no clue what I was doing, like absolutely no clue, you know, and I would have to tell people that. I think I really appreciated that, you know, some of the people that I worked with, that have been working on Olympic projects for a long time, like people that work for the Olympic broadcasting system and things like that. You know, I was always pretty honest. I wasn't afraid to say that I didn't know something. And I think some people actually appreciated that. You know, I wouldn't be afraid to raise my hand and be like, "Hey, I know my sport, but I don't know what you're talking about right now." Like because there's a lot of Olympic language that it's a whole nother learning curve. So, you know, but I think like it was pretty awesome. I was able to like I was able to hire my own team, and you know, my first couple hires went well, and then they trusted me. So like we kind of had certain members that worked just on freestyle, and then certain members that we shared with racing and freestyle. So I think collectively, I think I brought in like 7 people, and or maybe my team, maybe 5, maybe my team in total was 7. But it was awesome because there were people from the BMX world. So it was really cool to be able to you know, bring in people that understood our world and understood BMX and were passionate about BMX. And, you know, one thing led to another. Like I hired the first person and he did a good job. So then they trusted me to bring in more people. And then that just kept feeding on itself. And I became the go-to, like where, you know, it wasn't second guessed. Like, hey, who should we hire? And I'd be like, and luckily because BMX is such an amazing network and such a like a communal like type of world, like I mean I went there not knowing anyone, and you know before I left I had a crazy network. You know, one of the first people I met, my friend Hiroshi, was, you know, Chad DeGroot introduced me to him. He's like, "Oh, you're going to Japan? Like you got to meet my friend Chad." Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Chad, my friend Hiroshi. And then that was the kind of got the ball rolling, and then you know, Hiroshi was like a old school, kind of mid school flatlander. You know, we became really good friends. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like Ben Lewis was like, "Hey, you got to meet my friend Peggy." And then these guys were like my friend Peggy and Dice K became like, they were like the street rider, like they're like the street guys over there. And like, that's like, so like, it just kind of became like, it was all BMX, but it was like also very different networks. And you know, I think we were able to like build a team that came from very opposite ends of BMX, but still had different skill sets in both riding and the working world. And collectively, we were able to like just make it happen with a lot of good energy. So sorry, I'm rambling.
No, this is great. I love this, man. This is awesome content. Dude, it's really cool to hear just how many people you were able to kind of meet and work with throughout your stay in Japan, right? Like, obviously, you had mentioned Peggy, and I believe that he is part of the Motobunko crew, is he not?
Yeah, so Peggy and Dice K do Motobunka.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so yeah, so they're 2 of my really good friends for sure, and yeah. Just like really hold the like Japanese street scene together for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, it's
good.
Sorry.
I'd love to see a podcast. I'd love to see a podcast with those guys.
Oh man, I'd love to hit them up. How's their English, if you don't mind me asking?
Peggy's English is excellent.
Nice.
Dice K's is pretty good.
Nice. I'll hit them up and see if they're interested.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that'd be rad. I had Julian Milena on a little while ago, and with Julian, yeah.
I didn't see the episode, but I saw the list of people that you interviewed.
With Julian, I had messaged him, and then I had talked to Stu because he was living with Stu at the time, and you know, Stu and I both kind of came to the conclusion like maybe we should just wait a couple months and see if Julian, you know, because apparently Julian's English wasn't great at the time. So I think Julian spent about 6 months just learning English while he was in the States for a little while there. And dude, you wouldn't be able to tell. Like the whole time, I literally did all of my notes and put everything in translations to Spanish and then sent him a copy of it just so that like as we're going, he can, you know, go through and read it if he needs to. And he literally didn't have any issues like that. It was so cool. And like, I think everybody kind of agrees that that guy is a fucking hero. Like the
Yeah,
way, dude, Julian's
absolutely.
attitude and everything that he has done with the cards that he's been given is fucking incredible. Like it is so cool, you know?
No, absolutely. I mean, I love, like, I'm absolutely a fan of Julian, and watching his riding, even just from like that first real BMX thing that he did to the level he's at now is so drastically different. Like he's progressed so much, and like, yeah, it's. I mean, everyone knows. I mean, it's insanely inspirational and a pleasure to watch. And I mean, it's so rad too, because it's not like, I mean, he's obviously dealing with something that most of us don't have to deal with, and I feel like the level of riding is up there with with someone that, like, I don't know what, like, I'm like trying to be delicate what I say, but the truth is, like, I to say it bluntly, like, if he had two legs, he'd be rad, and he's doing it with one, like, so it's unbelievable, like, it's just unbelievably inspirational.
Definitely. Yeah, his whole story and everything that he's been able to accomplish is just mind-blowing, and it's kind of what BMX is and also needs, you know? Like we all know that BMX is if you fall, you got to get back up. You got to stay
Yeah,
dedicated. You're not going to be a BMX rider for long if you don't have that mentality, right? And I think that Julian of all people knows that best.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the craziest things. It's like I think about, like, when he crashes, like the way that like how you get out of things sometimes, and to do that with just one leg, and like the stress you're like putting on that one leg is gotta just be pretty intense. Like,
Definitely.
or like, yeah.
Yeah, I have a video part that I'll send you after this. But I did a podcast with a friend of mine, Pierre, who wrote a book. It's a photo book for a friend of his, Pascal Lafountain, who's a Montreal local who had been
Okay.
diagnosed with cancer, and they ended up having to take one of his legs. And Pascal spent a couple years just kind of playing golf, doing that, and then he just couldn't do it. He wanted to ride bikes again so bad. And he put out one of the craziest video parts I have ever seen. And this kid is just a local from Montreal who, wanted to ride BMX before he ended up passing away. And he put out,
Yeah.
again, the craziest part. I know that he was, I think he was Dig BMX's Rider of the Year in 2019.
Yeah, no, I saw the part that you're talking about. Yeah, I watched it, and yeah, it's yeah, I mean,
It's pretty wild.
it's yeah, I mean, it's just like an emotional situation. Like, I don't even know how to, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's tough, man. But yeah, let's move back to Japan here for a minute. Um, so obviously, you're moving to an entirely different country where you don't speak the language, and I was really curious, what surprised you most about Japan, and how long did it take you to really get fluent with the language?
日本語も少しですけど、ちょっとできる。 No, fluent, far from it. I just said that Japanese is difficult, but I can speak a little bit, is what I just said right there.
Nice. I love it.
And that's a very useful phrase. But yeah, I mean, I think I really went into it with a really positive attitude. Like, there was some coworkers or people, like, in the organization that I worked at, and I mean, we worked 95% was Japanese staff, like, that worked in the company. Collectively, like, through all the, 'cause I mean, for every sport there is a team, like we had for BMX freestyle. So whether it's tennis or golf or canoeing or track and field, whatever it is, there's those people working on that project. So I think there was over 4,000 people total in our company. Um, but most of those were Japanese people. So I would say 5 to 10% at most were foreign staff. And when I say foreign staff, I don't mean from the USA or from Canada. I mean, like, they're not from Japan. So they could be from Brazil, they could be from Singapore, UK,
Anywhere,
France,
yeah.
wherever, you know. And so, like, you know, you're mostly working with Japanese culture and you have to assimilate to it. Absolutely. But I think I went there with the right state of mind, in that both I embraced the opportunity to be part of something and like have a new experience. And I also understood that I needed to bend to how they work and how their culture works. You know, I encountered a handful of people that expected the opposite. You know, they would say the Japanese way, they would complain about the Japanese way. And I thought, like, you just moved to Japan to do a job. You need to, like, whatever the Japanese way is, you need to, like,
Get on board.
get with that. Like, you can't expect them to like work how you think they should work, or in the language that you think they should speak. Like we're in Japan. Like I mean, there was people, it was shocking to me, but I would see people that would get upset that meetings were in Japanese. And I'm like, dude, you just moved to Tokyo to do a job. What the fuck did you think language was going to be in, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, you know, I think I, like, was very patient and accepting of that immediately. And I realized that of course I needed information to be shared with me. I needed to make sure that it was done in one way or another. But I think you also have to be very patient. And I think that something that was really lucky for me was, you know, when I got there, our team was just getting built. And, you know, I had one guy who ended up being a great part of our team, Kazuhiro, who his English was kind of patchy, and we would struggle to get stuff done sometimes. But then as our team grew, you know, I was able to bring in my friend Hiroshi, who I mentioned earlier. And that was really great because his English is pretty solid, and we could, like, work together. We would have a lot of conversations. And then when we would go into meetings, I could just be like, look, you know what we need, make sure they understand it. And, like, I wouldn't even really need to speak during the meeting, you know? And then it was interesting because then, like, during our daily meetings, this would often be the case where, like, I was kind of the outsider and I would, like, sort of struggle to follow, and I would have to have people fill me in and translate and things like that. But then when we would have sort of the bigger meetings with, like, the UCI or with the IOC, I would suddenly become, like, the go-to person, and I would have to be the lead, like, kind of the information sharing person. So I suddenly became a very critical piece of the puzzle, like, which of course I was the whole time, but during your daily process, sometimes when you are the only one that doesn't speak Japanese, it feels like you're the outsider, you know. But you know, but again, they're, like, very accommodating and very respectful in Japan, like, very strong work ethic. And you know, some of the things I loved about the city in general was just, like, you know, how safe it was too. You know, you could kind of just travel anywhere. You could just get on the train, get lost, get off any station. You don't have to worry about where you are, if you're in the wrong neighborhood or anything like that. So you know, and I made a lot of good friends. Like I said, like, made so many good friends, and I think that was pretty special for me too, because maybe for a lot of people it's not easy to move to a foreign country and have that common bond with someone, but I think BMX gives us that. And so there was people I instantly connected with, and you know, I found it interesting because some of the people that I worked with that were in similar positions as me, a lot of their friends were other expats, like other people that worked at the company that spoke English or you know, were from similar places that they were from, whether it was, like, Spanish speaking people or whatever it may be. Like, they kind of, like, gravitated, and, like, all my friends ended up being Japanese people. and that's just because of BMX, you know. So it was kind of special in that way. Like our common bond was BMX, and it was pretty cool because it also was cool because they were able to show me a lot of very interesting things. You know, they showed me the local spots, the local bars, the local what restaurants, whatever it may be. Like I was able to like kind of experience the city and the culture in a way that wasn't a tourist type of scenario.
Definitely. Yeah, dude, that's super rad just to hear about, you know, your experience working in Japan. And I do think it's funny, you know, the amount of people that must have been working with you that you know, we're having such a hard time with everything being in Japanese, because I totally agree. Like, you're in a different country, you've got to adopt that country's values, that country's language, that country's everything, you know? And it must have been, you know, a life-changing, once in a lifetime experience, because just the scene there in general with BMX, I find so interesting and so cool, you know? One of the things that I absolutely love about Japan is the architecture and just everything within that. It's so different from North America, right? And obviously, with that, you're going to get way different spots. Like with your van in Japan video, all of the spots that you're riding are so different from, you know, most of the stuff that you would be able to ride in North America.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was a really fun project to work on because you know, I loved in general being able to explore the city and like you said, find such interesting architecture. And I think, you know, most specifically was a lot of the playgrounds and the parks and things had like such, you know, they're like skate parks. And I got really hooked on that stuff. So I was really happy. Like before I left there, I really wanted to do an edit on like that type of stuff, basically a street edit that was not actually street at all, like like park obstacles on the street. So um, you know, I was able to like it was a good motivation when like Dice K and Peggy were kind of getting their Motabunka thing going, and I was like, hey, like let's collaborate with Fit and do an edit, you know, and they're like, yeah, let's do it, and that was awesome for me because I'm kind of like I get in my like work mode, and then like I like to ride BMX early, and like by like 5 p.m. be settling down and have like a whiskey in my hand, like where like a lot of the guys I rode street with, they like to ride all night long. So they would start riding at dark and ride till dawn. And that was the total opposite of how I wanted to ride. So when I like came like presented this project to Dice K and Peggy, they were like, yeah, let's do it. Then it was fun because they kind of had to follow my schedule because I would like search on my phone. I would just like search children's parks near me, and then I would like find like I would like kind of just scan the like outward bounds, and I would like try to find one that looked like it might be good, and then I would ride my road bike. I would like do like road bike rides and like
Find
drop
spots.
pins. Yeah, I would like search out all the playgrounds, and I actually laughed at one point because I was like, someone's gonna come lock me up because I'm this like middle-aged like American guy that's constantly Googling children's parks near me. Like that's must set up some kind of like buzzers or something. But that's how I would like seek out the spots. So then I would ride my road bike and check out the spots. And then if they were good, sometimes they didn't have good run ups or they like weren't rideable for some reason, and I would just like forget about them. But then if they were good, I would drop a pin and then we would go there later. But like a lot of these spots were really crowded, but during the day, like they were like littered in kids. So we would have to go there at sunrise, you know. So we would like get on the first train at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. and meet at the spot at like 6. And then we'd have like an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on the spot, before like families and kids just started like covering the playground. Because I mean, some of those places get so insanely busy that there's no possible way you're riding it unless you do it that way. So yeah, we did a lot of like, I think Dice K counted at one point, but there was at least like 10 missions where we met up at like the crack of dawn to get those clips. So it was like you know, yeah,
Definitely.
but it was a fun, really, really fun project, and really good to like take advantage of those spots, because like I said, not all of them are easy to ride. So to kind of like find that motivation within yourself to like say it's worth waking up in the middle of the night to go hit this is like makes you feel good. You know, like a lot of times I would like my alarm would go off and I was like, I do not want to get up right now. But then when you're like actually get yourself going, you get on the train, you get to the spot, and then you're like you get the blood pumping and you're like, I'm so happy I did this. Like, and then you get the clip, and then you make that final product, and you have like I wanted to make that part to have a souvenir. For me it's a souvenir to say like, oh, this was like my time over there, this is like the stuff that I rode. And the like every like I always love to like, just like we were talking about Seek and Destroy earlier, like every mission, every video part, every clip has a story. So like when you watch a video part like that, literally every clip has a story and a memory behind it, like that the rest of the world never knows or never sees. So it's like kind of a special thing for yourself.
Definitely. Yeah. It's, I think, after filming 2 full-length videos myself, every clip does tell a story, and everything behind it you kind of see if you're there, right? Like I could go on for hours and hours and hours, days even, just about filming and all the stuff behind the scenes that, no one knows about. Some of them even being in the video. Like, I filmed 2 full-length videos, and I think that there's parts and stories that people who were in the video that weren't there for that exact clip wouldn't know the story behind it. And it's so cool that like BMX kind of has that. But I was going to mention, I feel like your riding in Japan must have been so much different than what it was like in China, right? Because in Japan, like you had to get up early to go and ride these spots before anybody got there, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to. Whereas at least what I saw from your trip to China, it seemed like when you started riding something, everybody kind of backed off and really wanted to see you do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that's interesting. I mean, I think as a whole, it's important to note that like a lot of, I think a lot of people from the West, like from the USA, like they kind of lump Asia all together.
It's definitely not the same. I want to point that out right now. They are
Yeah.
very different, and everything, how that, like China and, everything, it's so different from each other.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's important to note to like, because I mean, it is easy. I mean, to be fair, I would have done the same thing before I was traveling and seeing these kind of places. Like, you don't recognize the cultural differences that are happening in these countries. It's drastically different. And I think, like you said, I mean, it's hard for me to compare Japan to China, even in any sense, because I've done a lot of trips to China to judge events and things. I think I've been there 5 or 6 times, but compared to like actually living somewhere and being like immersed in the scene, it's very different, because you never know like what type of experience you're getting when you just visit somewhere for such a short time. So, I mean, to me, the spots in Japan, like China, doesn't hold a candle to what I rode and experienced in Japan. But at the same time, my stays in China were so short and limited. So, but I mean, yeah, I mean, you are right. Like in China, it's very interesting, because people very much like, they love to observe, like, and unapologetically observe, where they like will watch you very close up and are very just they're just very interested in whatever it is you're doing, and they're not afraid to like be up front about it or up close about it.
I love it, man. That's so cool. And all the places that you've been, just because of, a 20-inch bicycle, has to be so cool to think about. But I wanted to jump back because a second ago you had mentioned, backstories on certain clips. And I'll be honest, I have an entire list here of like different clips that I wanted to know about. And something that, you have discussed beforehand was your ender in the Criminal Mischief video. And I think it is, maybe you haven't talked about that one. You had talked about, I think it's your 2-4 ender, but your Criminal Mischief ender, I am so interested in because it's a gap. It's a manual to gap pegs on a second stage rail. And it is so wild and so timeless. Like, I honestly have a hard time thinking about anybody else who has done this, like this similar trick, But yeah, kind of tell us some backstory on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean that one was kind of it was that setup wasn't too far from the house I was living in at the time, which was in a town called Drexel Hill, which is like a suburb of Philadelphia. So like just outside of West Philadelphia. So like kind of the first suburb of Philadelphia on the west side. And, I mean, I guess at that time, like the time I was like filming for Criminal Mischief in general, I guess my ideas and my writing in general was, I guess, really just starting to take shape. And, that was just one of those things that I like was around the corner from me. And I thought like, hey, this would be crazy. I think you could do this. Like, and I remember Derek Adams, like owner of Little Devil, like even telling me at the time, like after I did it, he was like, I'll be honest, like I thought that was one of those ones that you were just like talking about and like wasn't actually going to happen, And but I remember like what the day that it did happen, I was actually going to community college at the time. So I had been living in South Jersey and I did like a semester at the Salem Community College in South Jersey. And I think the only reason I made it through that much school was because I had the torn ACL that I mentioned earlier. And then I told my parents like, oh, hey, I'm moving out. I'm going to go move into this house and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, well, like, you need to keep going to school. Like, where are you going to go to school? So I started going to this community college near there, which was the Delaware County Community College. Anyway, I was driving back from school, from classes, and Garrett Burns was meeting me to ride that day. Like he was waiting in my house. And for whatever reason, I just got that set up in my head. And like, I was driving home and my like hands started sweating and I was like getting real nervous. And I just like walked in the house. I was like, Garrett, grab the camera. I got something I gotta do. Like, and I just like, he's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, just grab the camera. Like, so we went around the corner and I started just doing like manual gap the stairs a bunch of times. And then finally, like, I was like, all right, like I'm ready. Like, and it just worked. It worked one take. And like, I think it's funny too with like the bro cam, like later on in my career, like I would have never just like Garrett wasn't a professional filmer or like even a good filmer. Like I just like handed it to my buddy and said, here, film this. Like one of the craziest things I've ever done to that point, and probably still in my entire life, like up there in one of the crazier things I've ever done. And I'm just like, here, man, film this. Like I just hand my random friend a camera. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, and that was it. Like that's the story. That's how it went down that day. Like just something I had in my head, and that day it just struck me on the drive home from community college that it had to happen that day.
That's so wild, man. It's such a crazy clip, and just to hear like everything behind it is super sick. It's honestly a clip that I think, like I said earlier, is timeless. And I think that most people can remember that clip and remember the first time that they saw it in a way. And again, I don't know anybody who has done something similar to that. I've always thought like there's a rail. It actually was at Cortland School, which we had talked about earlier. there was a curb that was lifted so you could ride down this pathway and then do a manual to just a down rail. And there's a drop on the side of the down rail. And I had looked at that for so long. And I'm not like the greatest BMX rider in the world. I've definitely sent my fair share of gnarly shit, but that scared the fuck out of me. And I don't know. I wish I would have done it, because now they have taken that out. There's no manual pad before this rail. And I don't know. Anytime I pass it, I just think, oh, I should have tried it, because now I never know if I would have landed it. You know, that was such a perfect setup. It could have been done. And I don't think anybody ever touched it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said earlier, that's probably what motivated me to do a lot of things during my life, is that like I would see things that I felt like there was some things, like a lot of times I would look for excuses, like give me an excuse, give me a card, give me a crack in the road, like give me anything. But some setups were just like, this is too perfect, this has to happen, you know. And you know, I think also going back to what you said, like, thank you, I appreciate that comment about like the timeless thing, because I think that is something that when I look back on my career, I am very proud of. That I do feel like a lot of the things I've done do hold up still, you know. And that's probably something that I'm like the most proud of, is that the riding is exactly that. And that's, I'm very proud to be able to say that the riding is kind of timeless and holds its own even in today's like
BMX
high
standards in a
level of
way.
riding.
Yeah. There's another clip that I'm very interested in from your Fit Life section. And this one, it might actually kind of catch you off guard, because it is very interesting. And I think just knowing, like, I don't know, what it's like to be behind a camera and filming, I found this one to be so, like, I don't know, just kind of out there in a way. But the clip is basically that you're on someone's back patio or like wooden deck, and you hop over a flat rail. It's basically like the fencing on the side of this deck, and then you manual down a wooden rail into a dirt hill. And I gotta say, man, again, super timeless. I think that what makes this clip so special, and like, I don't know, it really shows like the kind of rider that you are, is the fact that the gate beside the rail was closed. So you have to hop straight on. You're not going to go from the side and like hit the low section. You're making this as hard as possible for yourself. And I think that right there literally just says what kind of rider you are, which is super sick, right? But yeah, like what is the like backstory to this? Because like I said earlier, it looks like it's literally just the back of someone's house.
It is the back of someone's house. It's the back of my house.
Oh, what? That is so cool.
So that's actually really funny, because that deck was my house. That was like the first house that I bought. It was in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. And if you watch either my props interview, or if you can find it, I don't think it's online anywhere, but we did like a standpoint house check with Ryan Navazio once upon a time. So if you can find either of those, you'll see footage from that house. And I that clip was actually as I was getting ready to sell that house. So prior to that, like there was a like connecting to that deck before that, we built a 32-foot wide, 6-foot tall mini ramp in the driveway. So like a massive mini ramp. And again, if you find some of that footage, you'll see it. But that was something I had like looked at since I had bought the house. And then I was about to move, I was about to sell the house. So we tore down the ramp, and then that was left. And you had that like little hill, like coming off the rail. So like, I always thought that was kind of the thing that like, I mean, I always loved manualing rails, but I kind of liked the idea that you would like manual the rail and then kind of just dump off into that little dirt hill. that like kind of like made me think that it would be extra cool. So yeah, before after we tore the mini out and before I sold the house, I was like, oh, I got to make sure I film this. So
That is
yeah, that
so
was.
cool, man. I'm gonna play the clip now. It's so wild, dude. It's such a unique clip that, again, the backstory is really cool. I like that.
Yeah,
That's
and like prior, probably like a couple months prior, like where I just landed, there was a giant mini ramp there, like a 6 foot tall, 32 foot wide mini ramp. And like after we finished tearing it all out, we got that clip.
that's really cool. Yeah, I'll edit in some of the footage from that mini ramp too if I can find it. That's
Yeah.
really sick, man. Um, yeah, moving on from that, I don't think that we can not talk about Holy Fit. Holy Fit has to be one of my favorite video parts of yours. That whole video in general is incredible. I mean, anything that Stu is involved in, you know it's going to be good. Stu's got an incredible track record when it comes to BMX videos. And um, Holy Fit, there's so many different clips in there that I can tell you kind of really went all out on, you know? And one of the things that it almost just like, for some reason, always was so cool to me was one of your opening clips was a tire ride to bar X up. And I feel like a bar X up is just such a like dirt jump trick. And going back to, you know, being a well-rounded rider or an all-around rider, that right there proves it, you know? Like the fact that you're going to do it on the streets out of a tire ride is pretty mind-blowing.
No, thank you. I mean, I did make an effort to like, yeah, try to mix it up. And I mean, I always like the element of surprise. You know, I think speaking of that trick specifically, going back to Stay Fit part, I did like a rail hop bar spin to X up in that part. And I remember there's two clips in the Stay Fit part that I was especially proud of, and I noticed got an especially like good reaction, like at the premieres and things. And that was one of them because I don't think at that time like anybody expected to see like a bar to X up over a handicap hop. So like people were like kind of shocked by that, like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And you know, another one was in Stay Fit, like I do like a tire ride to like transfer over grind that like was a pretty like high hop. And I don't think anyone saw that coming either. Like they're expecting you to just do the tire ride, maybe do like a bar or a whip out of the tire ride or something, and then you kind of just like just throw a curveball with like a transfer, like the biggest bunny hop you can do, transfer left to an overgrind. And you know, I don't know if you know the clip I'm speaking of, but I was always
Absolutely.
proud of really like that's one of my favorite clips of all time that for myself. And I just like that element of surprise, and I think that kind of goes to the same you're saying about the two clips I had on that up rail was like up rail like no footed half bar spin and up rail tire up rail to bar to X up, and then like that one was part of a line. But yeah, like but yeah, no, I mean I don't know how much you want me to elaborate on the Holy Fit project, but I that's one of the definitely like without even thinking about it, like definitely one of the top five, if not more, like proudest things I've ever done in my career, because that whole part was such a conscious decision, like to do the best thing I could do. Like, you know, when I approached Chris with the idea of Holy Fit, I was like, hey, you know, I really pushed for Stu to do it, and I really pushed for the time that we needed to do it right. And Chris got behind all of that. You know, I think in the past we had like rushed some of the projects, and it's just like, hey, let's get the right guy. Let's take the time to do this right. And, you know, I knew in my head, like, I knew that wasn't the end of my career, but like, I knew that was the last time I was going to swing for the fences in that way. Like, I'm going to make a full length video part with the hardest shit I can do, you know? And I think, you know, I knew that was kind of like, again, not officially the end of my career, but like that was kind of the end. So then when we could kind of put the explanation point on that with a Nora Cup video part of the year at 34 years old, it like, I mean, it was a pretty emotional moment for me because I mean, I had won Nora Cups for Street Rider of the Year early on in my career, which I, was obviously very excited about and I'm still very proud of. But I think there's a different, a different level of appreciation when you are a little bit older and you're very conscious. It's not just happening. You're not just like when I was filming Criminal Mischief, I mean, I was working hard, I was riding hard, I was pushing myself, but you're also a kid and you're just kind of doing it. It's just kind of happening, And then when you're in your 30s filming for a video part, it's a much more deliberate goal. So that was like a pretty special moment, like to at 34. I mean, like there's just, I think just certain accomplishments are just that way. Like when you're older, you appreciate them that much more. Like same with like getting my first X Games medal at 28, that was a whole story behind it as well. But yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, with Holy Fit, it's got to be one of your best video parts ever, like everything that you went in on. I think that having Stu there is just like, it's got to make things way easier because Stu is, he's the best BMX filmer. Like it's widely known that he is the filmer for BMX, and having him there and being able to be confident in the fact that like all you have to worry about is doing the trick and doing the clip has to make things a lot easier. And, like you were saying, like you kind of felt that this was a good time to really push yourself because it might've been one of the last like videos that you would work on. And that's really cool. Like I found that video part is nonstop from the beginning to end, just bangers, constantly clips that are blowing minds, in my opinion, like as somebody who's done full length videos, you're always going to have, the filler clips as we call them. And your part has none, which is like hard to do. I feel like that whole part has just nonstop great clips that you really worked at.
No, thank you. I mean, that was absolutely the goal. And like you said, being able to work on it with Stu, I think, again, not that I thought that was entirely me being done, but, I felt like I'd worked on a lot of projects since Criminal Mischief, but I felt like I hadn't done anything in my career where I felt like the filmer / editor was as passionate about the project as I was. And, that's what I think happened with Criminal Mischief. And I think I was trying to answer that 10 years plus with Holy Fit. I was trying to say like, I'm giving this everything I have in me, like, of course you always leave, something unsaid or undone that you're like, oh, I wish I could have got this before I was done. But like, generally speaking, like I gave that project literally everything I had, I also feel like during that process it was like a mindset of like, I would go on a trip and like, I was very comfortable in my goals and very comfortable in my riding where like, I knew when I saw that thing that I wanted to do that I would rise to the occasion and get it done. And if it wasn't that thing, I didn't need to force it. I didn't need to be jibbing around to get this stupid clip or that stupid clip. If I went on a 10-day trip and I got one clip, like that was fine with me. Like it was going to be, I knew I was confident that like the final product was going to be well worth it. And like anybody who was supporting me or helping me through that project was going to see that and recognize, even if I don't think anybody did doubt it at the time, but even if they doubted it at the time, they would see in the end what I was up to and that I wasn't like half-assing, like everything had to matter. Like, and so I don't know. It's like, yeah, definitely one of the most proudest things. And then, yeah, for me, for sure.
Definitely. A minute ago, we had talked a little bit about Nora Cup, and I just gotta say, it's pretty wild to be a rider who can literally invite, five other people over, pour them a drink in your Nora Cup, and then drink one yourself. You literally have six Nora Cups, if I'm correct.
No, I think five.
Five? Okay, maybe I got information wrong there, but five Nora Cups, which is just like incredible. You've had such a fulfilling career in BMX, and getting a Nora Cup is literally the like accomplishment within that. And to have so many is pretty wild, so good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Like, I mean, I definitely like the first two for Street Rider of the Year. I feel very, very proud of, and then like to be able to have like a over 10-year gap and to get another one is pretty awesome. I do feel like my third and fourth Street Rider Cups, I want to give a shout out to Ruben and Edwin, because if it's up to me, I feel like Ruben and Ed should have my 3 and 4 cups, but the people decided, so I'll take it. But
there you go. Oh, I love it. Obviously, we have to talk about Road Fools. Road Fools was such a huge thing within, the mid-school era of BMX, and I think you probably have one of the craziest clips in all of Road Fools history. But, being a pro in the late 90s, early 2000s, like I was saying, Props and Road Fools were at the forefront of BMX media. When did you first kind of discover Props, and what was your first impression of Road Fools?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, are you asking what my first impression of Props was, or what my first impression of Road Fools was?
When did you kind of first discover Props? And, obviously Road Fools came later, but did you see those like Road Fools videos and then, get excited and potentially think that like one day you could be on there?
No, absolutely. So this is probably a good story. So one of my first videos ever was Props number 4. So I don't know what year that would have been, maybe 1994-ish. But it, like, Props number 4 had like a Taj interview and like a bunch of whatever random footage and things. But that was one of my first videos. I don't remember exactly. Like, I remember I had like 1201 was also one of my early videos, but Props 4 was one of my first videos and was my first issue of Props. So then after that, I became an avid subscriber of Props Video Magazine, and I would get every issue in the mail. I think I got subscription to Props for Christmas one year, and then had it all the way up until the day that it went away. Yeah, so I was obviously a Props fan, and I remember when Road Fools 1 happened, I was I was like about 17, and so this was my first ACL surgery. So I was talking about the one around the Schwinn era earlier, which was actually my second ACL surgery. I had my first one when I was about 17. And at that time, I had become like friends with Derek Adams, who was doing Little Devil at the time. And he had just started hooking me up with like free t-shirts. It's like, hey, like, I love the way you do no foot cans and turn downs. Like, you want to be on Little Devil? Here's some free t-shirts, So I was like part of the crew, like the early Little Devil days. And Derek went on Road Fools 1 as the chase car. So he drove his car behind the bus so that Chris Rye could get in the car and film like shots of the bus and things like that. So I was very jealous that he was on that trip, and I was sitting home with like a torn ACL. And actually, while he was on Road Fools 1, I was helping with Seek and Destroy footage. So we had like tons of tapes for Seek and Destroy that needed to be logged. Like some of the footage was just like hours and hours of like trail footage. So you needed to put like X up, turn down, no footed can, like 11:02 to 11:08, like tape number 16, like, you know, whatever, like, and you need to log all this footage so that when those guys sat down to do the editing, they knew where all the good clips were. So I was like going through all this like film footage and like writing notebooks full of like clips. And, you know, because later on, Derek and Daryl edited that stuff. Like, this is before you could just edit a video on a Macintosh. Like, this is like you had to go into like a studio and like have this guy with like the right equipment where he's got like putting tapes into like a machine and like reel to reel kind of like crazy equipment. And so anyway, I was like working on that, but I was very jealous that he was on Road Force 1. But in retrospect, like I remember I really wanted to be on that trip and try to weasel my way onto that trip. But in retrospect, I'm really glad I didn't, because I was a 17-year-old, like hungry, obnoxious kid, and I probably would have upset all my heroes. Like, I look at that trip, and it's like Dodge and Joe Rich and Sandy Carson and Jimmy Levan and like everybody. I would have most certainly at that point in my life annoyed the shit out of those guys, and they would have hated me, and I might have ruined my entire career. like I'm not even kidding. I think I would have been so annoying at 17 years old that like I might have like pissed off all my favorite pros, and they'd have been like, don't fuck with that kid, and like I wouldn't be here talking to you today, like, because I would have just been some asshole. Like,
oh my God, that's wild.
Like, I really think that sometimes. But then fast forward a little bit, so like you mentioned earlier, I had gotten on Schwinn and like things moved pretty quick. So I ended up, my first Road Fools was Road Fools 4. And that came about because at the time I was just like we had been like filming for Seek and Destroy and things like that. But like it, you know, at this time we're not in the Instagram era at this time. Like, footage takes a long time to come out. Like, you could be doing something for years and no one knows it, you know? So like, I was just like this dirt jumper kid because like Schwinn picked me up for dirt jumping, and I was like going to the DK dirt circuits, and Derek talked to Marco Masai, who like Props was Marco Masai and Chris Rye were like the main guys, and both good friends of mine. And now, but he said to Marco, he's like, oh, you should take this kid Van Homan on Road Fools. And he's like, oh yeah, like can he ride street? You know, and like that was like, because at the time I was just known as this like dirt jump kid, and he's like, no, he can. We're like filming for a video. He's been like bombing all these rails and doing all this stuff, and like so Marco ended up taking his suggestion, and I went on Road Fools 4, and then, you know, that momentum, I guess I made a good impression, because then I was on 5, 6, 7. So I think I was on 4 Road Fools in a row. Like after that, like,
that's so wild. Yeah. With number 7, of course, being the one where you did the tail whip over the Kona gap, which, dude, it is so crazy to just see that footage. I have never been to Kona, but I know for a fact that gap is ridiculous. Like, you could literally put my house, the house that I'm in currently, in the bottom of that snake run, and you would have tail whipped over it. And I know that clip gets a lot of love, and there is a reason for it, you know? Like, it's literally one of the craziest things ever done on a BMX bike. And just everything behind it is so wild, you know? I just love the clip where you try it, you didn't make it, and you're like, dude, that just sent me. I don't know why, but just everything about that footage is so wild, man. It's, dude, how do you even see that as a spot and then like think of doing a tail whip over it? It's just so crazy.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I mean, I like, yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I just like I really hadn't learned whips like all that soon before that clip, but I remember like making myself do a tail whip over anything that I feasibly could so that I didn't lose tail whips. Like after I pulled my first whip, it was like, okay, there's a box jump here, I'm going to tail whip it. Like if there was something that I thought I could tail whip, not on like some insane level, but like a reasonable obstacle or setup, I would make sure I did a whip to like make sure I was very comfortable with them. And then, I don't know, that setup, like, I mean, I guess the quote, the kind of semi-famous quote says it all, but I jumped it and I did a tabletop over it. And then, I felt comfortable with whips. And I was like, well, if I can clear it, I can whip it, so that was kind of like my mindset at the time. And, it worked. Like, I remember actually, like, I still feel like to this day that like the whip was like a little bit sloppy, and I remember like wanting to do it again. And I think Mark Losi like talked me out of it. He's like, no, you're fine. Like, don't worry about the foot. Like, cause I was like worried that my like foot kind of slipped off the pedal, and like, and he's like, probably a good idea that he talked me out of it. Cause who knows what would have happened. And no one seems to really care these days. Maybe it got grandfathered in, I guess. Like, I feel like if something was that sloppy these days, someone would call you out, but back then I guess no one seems to really mention it, so I'll let it go.
Dude, I don't even think anybody else has jumped that gap. Like, if there is people that have jumped that gap, it's a very, very small list. Like, maybe Dylan Stark. I feel like that dude, he just sends massive stuff. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that could do it. Like, I'd be curious to hear if anybody has officially, because I actually remember like soon after that trip, there was a CFB there. And I remember Alistair Witten like tried to jump it and crashed on it. Like, I don't think he pulled it. Like, and I at the time, I think my ego was a little bit like pumped up by that. Like, cause I was like, oh, you couldn't even jump it, Ali. Like, so I feel like I had like a slight arrogance, like, and I think he could have it, just like, whatever that day, like, didn't work. But like, I'm not talking shit on Alistair. Like, he's a very talented rider that can do a lot of things I never could. But on that day, it didn't work for him. And that definitely pumped up my ego a little bit.
Well, how could it not? It's wild. But yeah, jumping back on Road Fools, what is it like to be on the Road Fools bus? I feel like everybody who has been from that era or has like seen footage from that era has always thought like, dude, what would it be like to actually be there? It's pretty wild. Like, you've got a bus full of just BMX riders traveling and riding spots, parks, everything. What's your perspective on it?
No, I mean, absolutely a dream come true. I think any BMX rider from that era, their dream was to be on Road Fools. Because I think, for most of us as BMXers and as young BMXers, truthfully, our dream is to get in the van with our friends and ride all the spots we can. So I think Road Fools is just the ultimate version of that. You kind of have this this like honorable experience of like being invited like on this like elite trip, and you drive around in this tour bus and just ride BMX spots, and that's not real life, that's like rock star shit kind of, so you're getting to like live out your BMX dreams, but like on this like rock and roll tour bus with like all these people that share this common interest. And I think it's just a dream come true. Like, not even necessarily like, I think Road Fools is a dream come true to be invited on it, but even just the concept of Road Fools is a dream come true, because I think every BMXer, that's what we want to do. We want to get in the van, we want to get in the bus, and we want to just like go from spot to spot with our friends. And I mean, we would like just have a good time on the bus, and then we'd wake up and we'd be at a new awesome spot to ride, and someone would say, get out, ride your bike. Like, that's your job today, ride your bike. Like, so what could be better than that? So I think and I think it also is interesting, like going back to like just timing. I mean, I knew at the time that like being part of Road Fools was something special, but like now it's like part of history, you know, it's part of BMX history. And like to have been such a big part of that is a pretty special, amazing thing for sure.
Absolutely. I was really curious if maybe you could give us some Road Fools stories that, you know, people might not know about, or maybe some context to certain Road Fools that people don't know.
Nothing's striking me off the top of my head. Do you have any like specific moments that you might want elaborated on, or like, because nothing's like instantly striking me.
Well, I know that John Heaton was on Road Fools 7 with you. And was that the first time that you'd met Heaton?
Probably not, because I think we had like ridden and competed in like Metro Jams and things like that before that.
Right.
So probably not the first time. God, I wish there's got to be a good story somewhere that's just like not hitting me, but it's nothing is like coming to mind instantly.
Yeah, that's okay. We can move on, and then if you do think of anything randomly, or if anything pops into your head, let me know, and I'll just edit it into that slot there.
I should think of something, but to be honest, it is like almost pathetic, because I feel like most of us, or at least myself, were like so like, I was so like into BMX at that time that like that's the only place that my focus was, you know. Like now when I think about like you're in your early 20s traveling around on a tour bus to different cities, and you're just like, where's the handrail? Like, you know, like, and like you're basically like primed for like some sort of rock star lifestyle, which like I'm happy that we lived it the way we did, because I think that's what made us successful, is how like dedicated we were and how much we loved what we were doing, and we weren't distracted by other things, you know. We weren't distracted by partying or girls or like any of these things. Like even like I think about when we were on Road Fools Europe, and like the party crew, like Leland and Fids and like a bunch of guys, like they all went to Amsterdam, and like me and Wessel and like a couple other guys were like, we're going to the skate park. Like, and we like went and filmed all night at some skate park where these guys were just getting like out of their minds in Amsterdam, you know. And like, I mean, there's like two sides of me. Like one side of me is very proud of that, and another side of me like laughs. It's like now that you've been to like so many skate parks in your life, you're like, why? Like this is like I guess it's all a once in a lifetime experience in a way, but it's just like, it's just funny stories, like to think about how our mentality was, you know.
Oh man, I love it. That's so rad. Fids is he's wild, man. That guy is he's crazy. I love it.
That's another one you should line up.
I've had the Fids on. He was one of my first pro like guests, you know.
We'll see, what do I know? See, this is why I have to catch up.
There you go. Yeah, he was really cool. I gotta contact him again, because I feel like the early interviews were good, but I've come such a long way from then. Like even with my research and whatnot, like normally I spend 10 to 20 hours just researching and getting good questions and trying to make sure that the interview flows really well. But yeah, I had to go back and talk to him again. He's an animal, you know. I love it. A few minutes ago, you'd mentioned Metro Jam, and being a Canadian, especially so close to Toronto, Metro Jam has always played such a special part in my life. It's just one of those things that I feel like back in the early 2000s, Metro Jam was the event of the year. You know, it really was, like pros from all over the world flying in, and even some of the most recent ones that haven't been happening, unfortunately. But right before then, I went every time. You know, I was there in the bleachers. You know, I was screaming my head off. But it's just one of those things that has been such an iconic moment for Canadian BMX, and I would love to get your take on it and what you felt Metro Jam was and some of your favorite moments from it. I know Matt Beringer gave us some pretty wild stories from his weekends in Toronto at the Metro Jam.
No, I don't know. For me, Metro Jam from that era just says like that was the it event of the time. You know, it's like that was where you wanted to be. And that was like the core fun event, you know, like there was other things to be involved in or be a part of. But like, I feel like for every few years, the tide shifts and there's like that event, you know, and I feel like at that time it was like the Metro Jams and then kind of like faded into the backyard, the resurgence of the backyard jam. You know, which they were the amazing events. And then you kind of had, you know, you had things like the FBM Ghetto Comp. And, you know, more recently you had Texas Toast. And, you know, now I feel like you kind of have like Swamp Fest is kind of that, along with maybe some other things. But like, you know, you every few years the tide changes and like there's just that event that you need to be at or you're missing something, you know. And I feel like Metro Jam for like 3 or 4 years during the early 2000s was that thing. Like you had to be there or you were missing out. And that was also the event that sort of emphasized all styles of riding. You know, it wasn't like, okay, like this guy's not like going to qualify for the X Games, but he still might be in the finals at Metro Jam, and I want to see what he does, and he's my favorite rider, you know. And I think like it combined that like element of like street and park together, you know, which I think was something I always liked about Simple Session in more recent years. You know, more recently, like Simple Session, like broke up street and park, which in some ways is kind of cool because I know that like trying to judge those things against each other is nearly impossible, like judging apples to oranges. But at the same time, there was something special about the fact that you had like Brock Rayford competing against Daniel Durs. Like there's something like pretty rad about that. As much as it doesn't make sense, there's something special about it at the same time. So
Definitely,
I kind of like that. And I think that's what the Metro Jam like sort of captured, and it sort of like forced people to be like well-rounded as well. You know, you kind of had to be like a little bit park, a little bit street. Like you kind of had to tick all the boxes, which is fun. So I don't know. It's just, I mean, those events are like very, very special to me. That like I hold like that's like a very special like place and time for me is those events. Absolutely.
Definitely. And I am very stubborn on the fact that I think that every BMX rider should be a well-rounded rider. I don't think that there's any room for, you know, one particular thing. I think it's cool and I love that, but dude, BMX to me is the fact that you can get on your bike and go and ride anything, right? I've always been that way. I feel like, you know, if you are a really good street rider, you should at least be able to, you know, get sent to a spot where it's all trails and be able to ride that, right? You should be able to go to a park. The freedom of BMX is like what it is for me. And I feel like Toronto BMX Jam and Metro Jam embodied that, right? Because you had such different riders and such different obstacles on the course. Like, you know, one of the years they had a kinked rail, and, you know, you've got Brian Jakinski doing like gap to rails on it and everybody else too. Like, and then on top of that, you've got this jam literally made people's careers. Like, if you think about it, Scotty Kramer was unknown at the time, and then he showed up to BMX, like Toronto Metro Jam, and he's what, 15, 16 years old, and took, you know, one of the top spots. And that is so crazy. And then the same thing happened with Garrett Reynolds. He's 15 years old, and all the pros are like, how do we compete with this guy? He's so good, you know? I love that about Toronto Metro Jam, and I think it has such like it's played such a huge part in the culture of BMX. And I know all my listeners are tired of me talking about it, but it's such an important part of BMX, and it's so local to me that it's, it's truly there in my heart of like BMX, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Like those events are extremely special to me for sure.
There was a clip that I really wanted to mention from 2003. You're trying to do this bar to over pegs for the best trick. Dude, bar to over pegs is like one of the most technical, crazy tricks. And even back then, bikes are way heavier. The geometry is way different. Everything is almost working against you in a way. And, there's a clip of you just trying this multiple times over and over again. And when you finally get it, everyone is so stoked. And that, I think, really embodies what a jam and what the BMX culture should be about, is like lifting people up when they succeed, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was like, I've had a lot of trick battles in my life, and that's definitely up there with one of the hardest. I mean, I actually weirdly, coincidentally, we were looking for something I was with a couple friends of mine just like last week, like literally last week. And we were like looking for something on YouTube. Like one of my friends wanted to show another friend of mine who like doesn't really have anything to do with BMX, like something that I did. And can't even remember what we were looking for, but we came across that raw footage, like of that I didn't even know existed. And I was like, wait, I want to watch this. I didn't even know this existed. And it's that battle with that rail. And I couldn't believe, like, because even like I remembered that it was intense, but some of the slams I saw myself take, I was like, Jesus Christ! I just kept going, And I remember that when I finally pulled it, it was after the time, like that was allowed, but I just didn't stop. And I remember laughing because like I remember like I was just so like elated. Like I remember like actually Robbie Morales like giving me a hard time at the time because I like was just so happy. Like I didn't even like pay attention to anything. I just threw my bike, which apparently I threw my bike at Robbie Morales and hugged the security guard. Like, I just hugged the first person in front of me, which was a security guard. So I'm just like, one of our friends who, like I said, doesn't even ride BMX was like, man, he watched that like sequence and he was like, man, that must feel so good. And I was like, fuck, man, it does.
There's nothing like it.
It really does feel good. And like my body was just like, I was so beat up after that. Like everything was just bruised and like maybe the most beat up I've ever been without having an actual like serious injury. Because I was just one giant bruise and just could barely walk. But like when the thing works, it all feels worth it, So it's just like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that was definitely like a good moment. And it's very bizarre that you brought that up because I literally just coincidentally like watched that footage just last week.
I saw that footage yesterday while I was writing questions for this and just like had to watch it multiple times because it's such a rad battle to see, like you keep falling on it and I know for a fact that you're going to land it and that you're going to land it. It's just a matter of time, right? You just have to kind of work through it and really like get to a spot where it's possible. And it's another one of those clips that is timeless in my opinion, like an over pegs in my mind is one of the coolest tricks in BMX. Like I'll be completely honest, man. I think you have some of the coolest tricks that can be done on a bike. And that is an over pegs on a handrail and a downside double peg grind. Like a downside double peg grind doesn't ever look bad. It always blows my mind. It's always so cool. It's just one of those tricks that like, I don't know what it is about it, but I don't even know how to start like going towards trying it. And I think that's what makes it so awesome is that it's just so like obscure in a way. Like nobody really does it. And it's because it's difficult and it's hard and it's like not an easy trick to master.
No, I mean, there's some people in recent years that have like started to figure it out and like I love watching it because I don't think there's one of my favorite tricks, definitely top 3, if not number 1 for sure, is a downside double around a bowl corner. It's like one of the best feeling tricks you can do. And, there's a handful of guys that do it well. And, like going back to Josh Harrington was like a pioneer of that trick. And then, Gary Young, and now you have guys like Boyd Hilder, just like doing it so proper. And, but yeah, I mean, that is just like such a fun trick, especially like when you lay it over proper, and just, it kind of defies logic, and it's a really, really fun trick.
Definitely.
Jason Enns. By the way, I got to give Jason Enns credit for teaching me that trick.
That's super sick. Yeah, Jason's he's wild, man. He's one of the guests that I've always wanted. I have to reach out to him.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out, and he like gave me a couple tips that helped me pull my first one. I'd had a couple sessions with it, and then he gave me a top secret tip that like helped me pull my first ones.
Hell yeah, man. That's rad. This has been a recurring topic on the Goat Cave, is helmet safety and just the transition with certain riders to wearing helmets. And for yourself, I know that this was a pretty big step, for years and years and years, you didn't wear a helmet. And I think that whole era of BMX was kind of like that, right? And I think that with skateboarding, you still see it, it's very rare that you see a helmet. And even in BMX, right? Like, especially with street riding, most people don't. And I think that is somebody's choice, right? As much as like I am kind of against that choice, there is countless hours of footage of me riding without a helmet. And I've endured some pretty wild crashes without one that, it would have been smarter to wear one. But for you, I know that in the 2010 X Games street practice, you had ended up getting pretty hurt, and you ended up having a brain hemorrhage on your frontal lobe. So after that, I believe is kind of when you decided that a helmet was kind of needed. What led you to really feeling that way? And was there any difficulty switching? Like, a good buddy of mine, I've talked to him multiple times about this on air. We've done videos, talking about it. But for him, street riding, you never wore a helmet. And it took him multiple crashes of like knocking himself out. He ended up in a coma at one point because of that. And after that, he decided that it would be smart to wear one, right? And now it's gotten to the point on where he doesn't really ride anymore because he's scared himself out of it, because the last time that he crashed, he was wearing a helmet. He was doing everything he should have done, and he still got knocked out, still had all these issues afterwards. And I don't know, it's tough, right? Because yeah, in BMX, it's just always been kind of a subtle topic, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think unfortunately I learned the hard way, but also I was very lucky. You see, like you said, I cracked my skull. I had bleeding on the brain. I damaged my frontal lobe. I spent over a week in ICU. But luckily I made a full recovery. But it was weird. Like, it took probably 6 months before I was totally myself again. And, when you see scenarios like Scotty and Mikey and Brett, like, you recognize that, like, I'm pretty lucky to have been able to bounce back 100%. I mean, luckily all those guys are doing well, but it's undeniable that they were life-changing injuries for those people, and so it's actually even sort of makes it worse that, like, after Mike's injury, I kind of was like, oh, I should wear a helmet more, and when I would ride trails, and like most of the time when I would ride park, I would wear a helmet. But I still, certain times I would ride FDR a lot without one because it was just old habits die hard. So I didn't always wear one at FDR, which is probably one of the places that you should wear one most.
Definitely.
And and then street, I wouldn't really wear one And, yeah, so I mean, and then like you said, in 2010, I had that injury, and I remember it was really strange because I didn't even really get knocked out. I might have been like dazed for a moment, and then I remember like sitting up and like starting to walk around. I remember like talking to everyone, like the EMTs like checked me out, like flashlights in my eyes, things like that, and they were like, "Yeah, yeah, you're okay." Like, and I remember like even joking with Sean Burns because he was the alternate that year for X Games, and I was like, "Oh, don't get your stuff ready yet. I'll see you guys tomorrow," you know. And then I was going back to the hotel, and I thought I was okay. I thought I was just going to sleep it off and like wake up in the morning and go to the event and compete, you know. And I started like vomiting like as we were like getting back to the hotel. So then we went to the hospital, and then next thing you know, like I said, I'm in ICU for over a week, and just like I guess what had happened is my brain started swelling. So like as the pressure built, like I started to like be less lucid, and then like started to lose my sensibilities. Yeah, and like pretty scary looking back on that, and like thinking how like even like seeing like a good friend like go through that. Like I only halfway learned my lesson, like I was like, I should wear a helmet more, like, but like still doing some of the craziest stuff that I did without one. And, kind of silly. So like after that, like I made like a conscious decision, like to wear one full time. And then even like when I got on Bell, I learned like how important it was to wear like certified helmets. Like before that I was like, oh, we kind of know that like a certified helmet is more important than a non-certified helmet, but like, oh, it's still something, it's still helping me, so whatever. But then when I learned how like little like a non-certified like pro tech is really doing for you, it felt silly. And like I kind of wanted people, and still want to like educate people on that. Like I think everybody's choice is their choice to wear or not wear what they want. But I want people to realize that if you're wearing the basic like skate pro tech that's uncertified, it's not doing much. And if that's what you choose to wear, that's your choice. But like know that it's not doing much. And if you really take like a hard hit, like your brain is like suspended, like it's kind of like your brain is like floating in jello. So like a lot of times, like when you get hurt, like when I got hurt, I hit the back of my head, but like the front of my brain hit my skull, which is what caused the damage. So like you mentioned earlier, I damaged my frontal lobe, but I actually hit the back of my head. But I hit the back of my head so aggressively that it made my brain like sling into the front of my skull, and that's what did the damage. Like, so it's kind of strange when you think of it in that context, so if you're just wearing like your basic pro tech, it really doesn't do a whole lot.
Absolutely. And sorry to interrupt, but I know that firsthand. I used to work at a skate park, and when I did, during one of my shifts, I would just, go out and ride a little bit with everybody that was there. And I go to jump a box jump the one day, and when I land, my fork snapped, and I was only wearing a non-certified ProTech helmet, and I got really, really fucked up from that. And, I got lucky that it wasn't worse, but, even all these years later, it's 6 years later, I know that the damage from that, it could have been worse, but there's certain things, just the way that I talk sometimes and the way that I can't line up my words properly. I know that it's lasting damage from, taking slams like that. And it's not the only time that I've done that. I've had many crashes like that, but I feel like that one in particular was pretty bad. And I still have that helmet in my closet just to kind of remind me like, hey man, you should really wear a helmet every time you ride. And again, even after that crash, I still didn't wear one full time until honestly up till a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and that's scary. I mean, especially with like unpredictable things like parts breaking. You know, you can't foresee that, you know, and I think that's like, you know, this is probably this is definitely way before your time, it's even before my time, but you may or may not be aware of this situation, but like one of Joe Rich's good friends in the early, maybe even late 80s. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but Jeff Cron was like one of Joe Rich's good friends, and they were like both like on the same trajectory, like very talented. And Jeff, like his forks broke and he got paralyzed from the waist down.
Wow. That's so
like,
unfortunate. It's
and I mean, like if you do some research on Jeff Cron, some of the early ECD videos and things, he was good friends with Joe Rich. I think they're still really good friends to this day. But you know, obviously Jeff went a different direction than BMX after that. But I think he was really successful in whatever it was he does. Maybe something with computers. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I mean, was kind of set up in line to be on the same path as like a lot of the legendary East Coast guys like Joe and Lucky and like Mel Cody, those guys. Like he was part of that whole East Coast, Eastern Pennsylvania scene, and so scary. We can't always see those things happening, so we gotta. I guess it's a good idea to do what we can, but anyway,
definitely it's scary to think about, right? Because you had mentioned a few minutes ago that you know, your brain started to swell, and that's where the problems kind of were. And when you think, you know, 6 years ago, Scotty was going through the same thing, and they ended up having to cut out his forehead, like literally his skull. And he's got a 3D printed plastic skull now. Like it's very interesting. And Scotty's very lucky. You know, he's one of my biggest influences. I've always wanted to sit down and talk to him just about everything, and how talented he truly was as a rider, and how quickly all of that can be taken away. Especially, it's so unfortunate for him considering that he did everything right. You know what I mean? He was wearing a helmet. He always did. He always advocated helmet safety. And you just kind of see that like it can happen to anybody. And, you know, your chances of making it out are not always guaranteed, even if you do everything right. You know, you're taking better precautions. And I think that in itself is very worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. To move away from the helmet stuff, I've got a few more questions here, and then we're going to move on to the listener questions. So, you know, I was really curious with yourself riding for as long as you have and on as many bikes as you have. The mid-school era of BMX bikes are very different than today. You know, it's everything about them is different. The bars are shorter, the bikes are heavier, and just everything about them. Again, it's so different. Do you think that riding these heavier, beefier mid-school era bikes helped shape the rider that you are today?
I don't know. I guess I never really thought much about it. I mean, that was the best equipment we had at the time, and to be honest, in that era, like there was almost like a sense of like the heavier the better, because our bigger issue at the time was breaking stuff. You know, we were tired of breaking bikes and breaking axles and things like that. So I don't think, you know, we thought about much about the weight. I don't think it was till like maybe some of the stuff that Ruben did, where he started to try to go lighter with things, that companies started to put an emphasis on figuring out a way to maintain the strength and also make things lighter through, you know, more advanced technology. And then I think, you know, everybody started to follow suit in that sense of like, how do we keep this strong, but make it reasonably a reasonable weight as well. So I don't know. I guess it's possible, but I've never really considered it. I mean, things have just slowly and naturally progressed. So As the bikes have gotten better, I've used them and adapted to them, but I think in the beginning I was just happy not to snap my axles
There you
or
go.
snap my two.
Oh man. The landscape of BMX has changed a lot in the past 25 years. And I was really curious, how do you feel social media has changed things, right? Because in the early era of BMX, a lot of pros would be paid to be put in magazines, right? We had print media out there, and if you had a certain contract with a company, they would pay you for every photo that you had in a magazine. Do you think that having social media has kind of helped in a different way?
I think there's pros and cons to both. I mean, it's certainly easy for me to like glorify the early days and say that like, oh, back in the day, blah blah blah, like, which I think there are positive elements to the way that things were, because I think there was, more importance or more of an explanation point put on certain goals and certain accomplishments, where now no matter what you do, it's kind of here today, gone tomorrow, because the world and the media is very disposable. So it just kind of goes quick. And I mean, certain stuff does stick with people to some degree, but it just doesn't feel the same. But on the other end, I feel like it's nice. I feel like there's kind of a place for everything, and there's a place for people to like, show those everyday feelings and those everyday vibes and the things that were once leftovers that went deep into the archives. There's a place to put that stuff now, and it's worth seeing. I guess for me, one of the more disappointing things is I feel like a pro's career is a little more disposable now, which disappoints me. Like, I feel like during my era, like, putting out a full video part, getting a props interview, getting to go on road fools, getting the cover of a magazine, these were all like benchmark achievements to be a professional BMX rider. Now it's just like you just have to bombard people with content, but all of it just disappears into the abyss. Like you don't like, and I mean, maybe it doesn't matter to people now. Like maybe this is just the old school in me, but I love like having a box of like videos and magazines and magazine covers and like achievements to like kind of mark my career and say like I did this, and I think there's guys that are like totally on the same level nowadays as I was then. Like they're the current version of like what I accomplished in my time, and their career is a little bit disposable, and I find that unfortunate. I mean, there's certain benchmark things. Like, I mean, obviously competitions will always be that, like X Games medals or Nora Cups. I'm glad that like RBMX is like keeping the Nora Cup thing alive. And, I'm glad that like now things like USA BMX are starting to do like more contests and do like amateur contests again, which like kind of revisits what the CFB was doing in the early days. And like, I'm really happy to see those things happening and just kind of keeping that alive. But it's just like there is like a little nostalgia in me that's just like, man, like you could have a 20-year career and then go like, what do I have to show for it? Like, oh, I have this many Instagram followers, like, so but I don't know. I don't know how much of that is just me being old school and how much of it matters to the heart of it.
I think having physical versions of things is such an important thing for a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I have a shelf over there that literally has everything that I've ever created, at least one copy of it within BMX, And to me, physical is like king. You know, I have a bunch of magazines over there, magazines that I wouldn't have even read because I wasn't into BMX at the time. I have DVDs that, you know, are so important to me. And it even goes into the way that I listen to music. Like I love vinyl and I love the experience of being able to hold something. And I think having magazines and having a physical form of things has to be a lot more meaningful. You know, like I have a decent amount of listeners every time that I upload. And to me, it's just numbers on a screen. But if that was like people getting a product, it would be way different, right? Because you see every step of that. You see all of it. Not that I don't now, but it's different, you know?
And I think you're right. I think there's a way previously that the industry kind of policed itself with like quality control, where now it's like there's no way to prioritize like what you should see. Like, so if like something that someone put a lot of work into or a lot of effort, and it's like the premier thing to see or like to absorb, you don't necessarily accept that as the truth. And someone just, it's so easy to just mindlessly scroll through your feed because there's something to entertain you. Where like before this current era that we're existing in, you had to go to the shop and be like, oh, the new video. Or in a lot of cases, you looked forward to that video for months, you know, because there was only a few videos coming out every year. So you know, it was kind of like self-policing in that, like, it wasn't so easy to put something out. So what came out was relatively good. But at the same token, I love that everybody has the opportunity to, like, in a way, like, have their voice, you know, to be like, hey, here I am. Like even YouTubers who you might hate on some of them. It's like, in a way, it's like a positive thing because nobody can say like, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this, you know? And so I feel like it goes both ways. I mean, I'm certainly like an advocate of like not dwelling on like my era. Like, I think the world keeps moving, BMX keeps moving, and like there are positive things to be taken from it, like in every aspect. So like, I think just as there was something special to the early 2000s for me, a kid that's 20 years old right now, this era is special to him. And like, that's going to like mean something. So like, I never want to be that old bitter guy that goes, oh, back in my day, or like, oh, it should be this way or it should be that way. Like, you know, like the world is constantly evolving. BMX is constantly evolving. And I think that's a positive thing. And, you know, I think we can hold on to our history and our heritage and we can share it. And I think that's a good thing, you know. But, and like I said, I'm happy that BMX has a history now. Like it's awesome. Like, it's awesome that there's older guys still riding. There's awesome that there's older guys that still care about BMX. It's awesome that you can come out with a Mike Aiken frame or a Brian Foster frame and people want it, you know, because those names mean something to them. Like, a 40-year-old guy might still want to ride BMX, but a 40-year-old guy doesn't want to look up to the 17-year-old wonder child that can do all the latest, greatest BMX tricks. That's not who you like. That's not who you like look up to, you know. That's like, regardless of like how amazing he is or how much you respect or appreciate him, like you relate with like your lineage or your like era, you know. Like that's like, you're gonna be like, that's my guy. Like, you know, I even felt that way with like Fit at one point, like where it was like there was a bunch of like signature bikes and I was like, man, like that dude's cool, but like I can't ride that kid's bike. Like, give me the Aiken frame. Like, you know, like I can't ride that. Like, you know, like that kid's awesome, but like I can't ride it, like that frame. Like, come on, like, and nothing against those people. Like, I'm not even like a specific name, but like, it's just like, you're gonna like relate with your era more so and appreciate it more so. I think it's just natural, I think.
Absolutely. I don't think you could have put it any better. You know, I think that we always gravitate towards people within our era or people we looked up to. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with looking up to somebody who's in a different era, maybe younger or even older. But I think majority of the time, you're going to want to have something that's, kind of true to your era, your culture, the way that you interpreted BMX at that time. Right. And that's rad. Anyways, I did want to move on to the listener questions now. And, we have quite a few. Yeah. Again, thank you for taking so much time to do this.
Got a refill. I'm ready to go on these listener questions.
Love it. All righty. These are all sent in from listeners of the show. I love getting these, so thank you guys. If you haven't sent one in before, I post something up on Instagram, and you guys just comment underneath that, or send me a DM, and we will throw it in the show. So first off, this comes in from listener Stu Johnson. Stu, I always reach out to. I always want to know what he has to say, anything he's got from behind the scenes. And, he always sends in some great stuff. So Stu says, first off, let me say what a pleasure it's been to see you accomplish what you have with your BMX career. You have inspired countless riders, myself included. I am beyond proud of you.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you.
And then he goes on to say, was there ever a time in your career, maybe a particular crash or injury, that made you rethink your approach to doing more dangerous tricks?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think every major injury that I've had has kind of given me like a new appreciation for what it means just to be on my bike. So like I mentioned to you before, like I've had 2 ACL surgeries, my head injury. I think, I had a really bad leg break at one point. So I think every injury kind of like did like sort of a reset and made me just be like, I just like riding my BMX bike. And there was like a certain period where I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want to take big risks because I just wanted to enjoy being on my bike as a whole. So, I don't think there is like one in particular injury, but I think every major injury has done that. And I think I've gone through like a lot of phases in my life and my career with my riding where I've had times even like in my 20s, like, I mean, I had one year when I won a Nora Cup where, like I said, I kind of said to you earlier, I think this one probably belongs to Ruben, but I literally spent 6 months riding trails and 6 months recovering from, well, I'm sorry, in reverse. I spent 6 months recovering from ACL surgery and 6 months riding trails. I probably grinded one handrail that year, and I won Street Rider of the Year. And that was, I think, still like that was a very different era. So like, I think I was still winning off of like momentum off of Criminal Mischief, even though that particular year wasn't that. But, so I guess the point is it's like ebbs and flows. And I think like, yeah, you have different phases in your life, and every injury has given me like a new appreciation for my bike. And I think, maybe, as I mentioned earlier, now I've like kind of officially moved on to like a new phase of how I approach my riding. But yeah, thanks, Stu. Thanks for the question. Thanks for all the opportunities. I mean, just to give some background, I mean, I literally like Anthem 1, I filmed clips with Stu that were in Anthem 1 in like 1997 or so. And then, we won a Nora Cup together in 2014. So like a lot of special moments with Stu Johnson. So.
Absolutely. Stu also asks, which clip is the one that got away that still keeps you up at night?
Wow, good question. And I like that I have to think about it because that means it's not haunting me too hard at this point.
I love it.
It's weird. I don't know that this is the one that got away, but just because I'm thinking of you and I'm thinking of clips that like I would have liked to have gotten done. I think it was in Phoenix. There was a kinked rail manual that you and I were trying to film. It doesn't haunt me too hard because I have the I have the rail manual in the 2x4 video, the kinked rail, and I have some other things. But I remember like getting close enough to that I was like, I can do it, and then we got kicked out. So a lot of people aren't going to know what I'm talking about, and maybe you have some raw footage somewhere that the world's never seen, and you can show them this crash footage. But that kinked rail manual in Arizona, I think a couple more tries it would have got handled. So I don't know. There's probably something more substantial that's like the one that got away. But thinking of tricks I would have liked to pull, that one's the first one that popped in my mind at this moment.
Oh man, I love it. Stu has a couple more here. He also asks, what is the most ridiculous / bizarre offer that you have turned down?
I don't know. I guess like maybe an inner bike, like a long time ago when the whole like mountain bike, big bike thing was like coming into play. Like I don't even remember specifically, but I remember like some people kind of trying to pitch it like, hey, can we get Homan on a big bike? You know, like trying to get me on like a mountain bike program or something like pretty early on. There's probably something more obscure. I mean, I definitely appreciate the opportunities that Stu gave me. Like me and I sat there eating unheated Hot Pockets on a pier in Philadelphia not all that long ago for a pretty lucrative opportunity. So Navaz still laughs at me because I think I actually enjoyed eating frozen Hot Pockets. I was hungry that day and I was just supposed to take a bite like for the shot, but I was literally like eating them because they were delicious. And I'm not a super vegan vegetarian like Stu and Navaz, so I enjoyed these terribly unhealthy Hot Pockets even in the frozen state. So.
You know, it's hilarious. Stu's next question is, how much do you love Hot Pockets? Like legitimately, that's the next one.
There you go.
Oh my God.
See, I'm always ahead of the game, Stu. I'm always ahead of the game. There you go.
Holy fuck, I love it. Stu also asks, looking back at your BMX career, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't know that I would have done anything different with my BMX career. Maybe a couple sponsorships that I kind of poo-pooed off, or was maybe too honest with my advice on the company. I remember I had like a very early on in like the Red Bull era, I had someone asked me to like, they wanted to ask my advice on like the BMX program for Red Bull. And in retrospect, they were clearly like looking to feel me out for a sponsorship opportunity. But at the time, I really like, honestly, first of all, I didn't care because at the time I didn't want to be part of anything like Red Bull. It was when like, I think their only BMX rider might have been Jerry Bagley, and he wore the goofy Red Bull helmet. And I was just like, you know, I was doing fine. I was like, I don't want any parts of this. So like when they asked me questions, what I thought about it, I was just very honest. And when they asked me did you think you'd ever ride for Red Bull? I was like, I don't know. Maybe if you guys did this and this and this, but I'm not really into it, you know, like, and, and like looking back, I was like, that might have been a decent opportunity. So maybe that, and then, you know, I might have, made some better investments along the way, but that's not necessarily to do with my career. That's more life things. But I mean, overall, like I can't complain. Like, I mean, I've had an amazing 20-year career doing things the way I wanted to and the way that I felt they should be done. So I really, there's very little that I would change. Like when I say these things, I'm searching for things to say that I regret or did wrong. So I'm generally pretty happy with the way that my career panned out.
I love it. That's great, man. Stu also asks, any advice for young riders aspiring to become professionals?
I think when it comes to young riders trying to be professionals, I mean, I think it's the age-old advice that we've been giving for a long time now. I mean, I think it's just first of all, I think you just have to enjoy riding BMX. And then I think it's like we mentioned earlier, I think get in the van, go to events. I think there's a lot of stuff happening now. Like I said, USA BMX is doing amateur contests. Go to that. Go to Swamp Fest. Go be part of BMX. And if you're embracing that, enjoying that, and participating in it in an organic way, and you have that talent, you have that je ne sais quoi, then people are going to notice, and you're going to have opportunities. So I would just say, just have a pure motivation and just get out there, get in the van, get in the car, pitch in gas money with your buddies, and just go live it, man. That's it.
I love it. That's some great advice, honestly. I think that is the way to take BMX and, always, I don't know. That's how BMX is. That's what BMX is. And I think that anybody that can kind of adapt to that and really, do that, they'll definitely see their place in BMX, if that makes sense.
I concur.
I love it. Next one is from Chris Silva. He asks, best Metro Jam memory.
I guess I was trying to take a moment to see if something struck me more, since we already discussed the bar to overgrind. But I guess I would have to say the bar to overgrind was like the memory that stands out the most in my mind, personally. There's been, they all kind of blend together into one amazing experience. So I think that all those events that I shared with all the riders that were regularly at those contests is just holds a special place in my head and in my heart. I guess if there's one specific moment, it would be the rolling away from that bar to overgrind after going to battle with it for so long. So
I love it, man. That clip again is just so wild and so gnarly, so technical, and so, it's so timeless, like I had mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
And this next one comes in from Jesse Dzikowicz. He says, how many concussions have you had? I remember seeing footage from the Tailwhip fence gap in China and thinking that crash was so brutal.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number. I mean, there's a few pretty rough ones that stand out in my mind. Like the one in Louisville in Criminal Mischief, the backwards rail was exceptionally brutal. And, that's one of those ones that I look back on and I'm very lucky that it wasn't a lot worse. And then, the one at X Games was pretty bad. The China one was pretty bad. I'm sure I've had a few things here and there. I don't know. I think maybe I'm still under double digits, I think, which is not too bad, especially if you compare it to some vert riders and things like that. But I've definitely had a few pretty obviously serious ones, and then I'm sure just a few bell rings here and there. So I couldn't tell you exactly, but I think it's still in the single digits as far as bad concussions or even concussions in general. Nice.
That's good to hear. One of the things that I worry about so much is CTE, and it's something that I've done so much research into, and it's something that I shouldn't research so much because it scares the shit out of me. But I don't know. I feel like having a low number of concussions is definitely important. A good hit to the head is never good. So
CT is scary. And I mean, let's be honest, single digits is low in the BMX world. It's not low in normal terms.
Oh my God. Yeah.
to be proud to have less than 10 concussions is in the normal world is not,
it's pretty wild,
but
yeah. This next one comes in from Chris Rantel. He says, how comfortable are you with aging?
I think pretty good. I think pretty good. I think that it is a very important thing to be like comfortable with where you are at for where you're at in life. And I think, anytime that I do have doubts or moderate depression, things like that, I think, and that's like sounds weird to say, but I think that's like something that everybody goes through to some extent, especially as you age. You have like these moments of like insecurity or these moments of doubt or depression. May they be major or minor. And I think it's important to be able to say that and accept that. And I think for me, those things don't come from getting older, but maybe questioning if you're where you want to be at that age. And I think in general, I can say that I'm happy with the things that I've accomplished and where I'm at 42 years old. So I generally do have like a comfortability with being 42 years old. Like I'm happy to move on to the next stages of life at times. Like I think like, it can be easy to get hung up on certain eras or the glory days. And I think one of the most exciting things in my life was relatively recently in 2018, when I was able to say, like, I'm done with being a professional BMXer, and being able to like feel good about that. And I think it's easy to get hung up on things like that. And and the uncertainties of the next chapter can be really challenging. And which I'm facing even at this moment, I finished up in Tokyo, and there's been a lot of possibilities, a lot of conversation. And I'm at a point, like literally at this moment, where I'm making a lot of challenging decisions. And I think those moments in time can be hard. Yeah, I mean, generally, yes, I'm comfortable with aging, and I'm very happy with the things I've accomplished, and I'm very excited about the things that I'm moving on to next. So I think, yes, I'm comfortable with it.
I think we're all very excited to see what's next for Van Homan. I definitely am. I always will support anything you do, because it's always great. Everything that you've accomplished in BMX is always something that's so spectacular in a way. Like you always move on to something and you put in just as much effort as you would into a video part, and that is a lot of effort. Like, it's great. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, hopefully there's a couple possibilities on the horizon. So hopefully we can do a little update even. The next couple of weeks might have some very interesting news. So we'll see.
Definitely. I will definitely reach out. This next one comes in from Ryden Rampco. Finish this sentence. If you can jump the gap and you can do a tail whip.
You can tail whip the gap.
I love it. He also says, how much fun are garage ramps? And before we dive into that, I do got to say, Jordan, aka Ryden Rampco, is a very good friend of mine, and he introduced me into garage ramps. And the ramp setup that he had in his garage was so wild. And just those tight transitions, the way that everything is built, it's always so much fun just to see kind of how fast you can get through there, and the transfers, and just everything you can do within a tiny little space. At least my opinion.
Yeah. So Kim, I don't know if you're familiar with potentially the garage ramps that he's referring to, but like I used to have the same house of the rail manual that you mentioned. I had garage ramps at that house, and again, if you watch my old Props interview, you'll see some of that setup. So that might be why that question's being asked. Yeah, I mean, I love anything like that. I mean, I've always been one to really appreciate simplified riding on more complex obstacles. So like when you build like a really tight setup inside of a garage, you have to make use of that space in the best way possible. I find that fun. Like, how do we use this space to make something rideable? And then how do we actually ride it? I find that fun the same way that I find like finding something on street and being like, okay, this wasn't meant to ride, but how do I use it? And, you know, I like to simplify things. I'd rather do a simple trick on a bigger obstacle than overcomplicate it with like technical things. So, you know, yeah, like I just think like I'd rather like overcomplicate something simple than wait, does that make sense? I'd rather simple. I don't know how to say this. Wait. I'd rather do something simple on a complicated obstacle than something complicated on a simple obstacle.
I like that. That's it's very true to your style of riding and the way that, you know, you are on a bike. That's it's so true. I did want to mention, if you ever find your way back to Ontario, Canada, let me know, because Jordan has one of the craziest ramps ever. Jordan is a professional ramp builder. Outside of that, he is an engineer. He is one of my best friends in the entire world, and this guy is by far one of the smartest BMX people I've ever met. And his ramp setup is just insane, dude. This guy.
Wait, who are you talking about? Jordan who?
Bonifacio. He built Mike Varga's ramp. He built parts of Pat Casey's ramp. He's constantly building indoor parks, and his backyard setup is so cool. And it's not even finished yet. That's the other part. Like, it's such a great use of space, and I think you would really enjoy his setup if you were to check it out sometime.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd love to make it up there sometime. We'll see.
Definitely. This one comes in from Harvester Bikes. They say, XS team, most stacked BMX team in history? Question mark.
It was a pretty heavy one. What do we had? Like Garrett Burns, Isaac McRae, Jimmy Levan, Sandy Carson. Interesting story about XS. When Schwinn filed bankruptcy, Chapter 11, apparently XS was the first department that they shut down, which happened to be the only department that was profitable the prior year. Granted, it was one of the smaller departments, but it was the only department that wasn't in the red. And that was the first one they shut down.
Wow.
which seems a little backwards and confusing, but yeah. So yeah, it was a pretty heavy squad, the XS team. I don't know if I would say it's the most stacked of all time, but it's a pretty heavy one.
I like it. This one comes.
Definitely
Sorry.
Nah.
Continue. No, continue.
I don't know. That was a pretty. I'm like thinking. The more I think about it, the more I think you might be right, because we definitely have like the best one-handed flatty in there. We have one of the most legendary gaps in there. One of the most stylish riders of all time in there. Like, so I don't know. Like, you could have a good argument, but yeah, you could have a good argument.
Dude, I gotta be honest. Anthony at Harvester Bikes knows his shit. That guy is he's great. He's always ingrained in the history. He's always looking at it. He's always keeping up with, you know, current BMX, and always looking back as well. Shout out to Harvester Bikes.
Another I apologize for all these suggestions.
No, of course.
That's another go to an Isaac McRae. Isaac McRae would be an amazing podcast. He's obviously has quite a history, and he's a hilarious individual. So I could imagine it would be nothing but entertainment.
Oh man, I definitely got to hit him up. I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on from that, Adam asks, will you ever be coming back to Southern Ontario?
Where's Southern Ontario?
Like my area, like Toronto.
Kitchener?
Kitchener,
Downtown Kitchener?
Toronto,
No,
London.
I would like to do a trip actually back to Toronto. I've done a couple trips in the nice weather. Like there's actually a few. Again, I keep like referencing my props interview, but I think there's a handful of Toronto clips in my props interview. Like Montreal clips as well.
Nice.
Maybe they're more Montreal clips. I don't remember, but we used to always say that like we would go because we always went to Toronto for Metro Jam, and then we would be like, oh, we need to come back here in the summer, and then it would like very rarely happen. Although we did go to the what was that? The what was that music festival? There was a music festival. The Summer Snow Jam or something.
Interesting.
I don't know. Anyway, we went to Toronto for some jam in like 2002. I remember I made John Paul Rogers listen to like Avril Lavigne the entire drive up, and
I love it.
And there was it was a good time. But anyway,
Oh man, that's great.
details are lost. The details are lost.
Oh, dude. Alrighty. Next one comes in from a listener to the show, and they ask, would you ever throw on a front brake?
Nah, probably not at this stage. I think I'm pretty set in my ways as far as my bike setup. I generally I'm a back brake 2-peg guy. I got to admit, I saw that like roller coaster set up at the Swamp Fest, so I'm thinking about throwing some pegs on the other side just to hit that. But generally, that's my system.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'm a front brake rider, so you got to say I love my front brakes, but my setup is weird because I've got the old Tobias Wiki one lever, 2 brakes. If that makes sense. I've been running that for probably like 3 years. It's very, very strange. And
that's complicated with you got the cables. I don't know how that works.
I've got an old Primo Pervert where I have all the cables kind of hooked up through that so that when I pull, it pulls both brakes at the exact same time. So there's no like, if I'm pulling the brake, both of them are locking up.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's interesting.
I like it.
Moving on from here is Nathan Vandenberg. He asks, any new video parts coming out?
I mean, nothing in the works at the moment. Like I said, I was really happy with that edit that I did with the Motobunka guys in Japan, and I think like for me now to want to put something out, there has to be like sort of an inspiration, like a concept, and so I mean, nothing in the works at the moment, but I don't think that I'm opposed to doing another project at some point. I just need like an idea and inspiration and someone to work on it with. So we'll see.
I love it. I would always be very happy to see more Van Homan footage.
Thank you.
This one comes in from Nick LS Derrick. He says, what's your favorite signature frame or colorway you've had over the years? I have the Van in light blue.
The Van was a good one. Had the New Jersey Devils like brake bridge on it. That was definitely a good one. Like I mentioned earlier, I guess honestly, like, I really the Mean Street is like a very very nostalgic, memorable thing, and I'm really happy with the most recent frame that we did with Fit, where it's just the VHS. So kind of we took inspiration from the Little Devil Criminal Mischief video, and we had the red cassette tape, and we had the Fit Bike Co. like written in like tape, like VHS tape. And it was called the VHS, which kind of doubles for Van Homan series and VHS tape that the video would have originally been released on. So, yeah, I think somewhere in there, like either the Mean Street or the most recent one would probably be some of my favorites. So, but I did really like those colorways that we did with the van frame. We had the green and the blue. So
I love it. Next one comes in from Drop Dead Derek. He says, when is Muller going to put out a new Homan frame?
I don't know. I'll ask him. Chris, when are we doing a new frame? Like, I mean, I do feel like there is like, you know, it wasn't, I mean, I guess it's been a few years now. I think maybe it was 2018 that we did that VHS frame. And even at that time, that was sort of like a limited edition, sort of like based on like a nostalgic energy. And it, you know, it did really well. Like, I think he did an initial run of them and it exceeded like what he thought it would do. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think there is a very much an older audience like now. And I think that it would be fun to do something like you mentioned, like with me and Mikey and BF still being like part of Fit. Like, you know, it would be fun to do some type of limited edition release with like the legend Fit riders. So yeah, who knows? Let's talk about it, Chris. Let's see what we can do.
Dude, I think Chris should listen to this right here. I think a legendary Fit frame would be incredible. You, BF, and Mike Aiken all collab on one frame. And you guys set it up so that it's all three of you equally joining in on this. Dude, I think that right there would be...
I don't know. I think we got to do separate. I think we got to do separate frames. I think you got to pick like I think we do a limited edition, because I think if we do, we all have different riding styles. We all have a different bike that we want. So I think that we do like small runs of what we're really into, and each person can pick or collect the ones that they see fit. I don't think like, I think if we try to like collaborate all on one frame, we kind of, it
might get a little weird, eh?
Yeah, like we all have different styles. There's your Canadian and you're right there. If that's your first A, I think that's good. It took you this long.
I'm not a very good Canadian, apparently. I was gonna say though, 25 years of Fit is coming up. You know, it's not that far away. That could be cool, like a 25-year anniversary signature Legends frame. I like that.
I'm into it. I'm not opposed. Let's do it.
There you go. Get on it, Chris.
I don't think he'd be opposed either. I feel like he always supports our ideas. So I think if it's something we're into, he'll be into it. So
hell yeah. I know I would support that. You know, I'm running a Bash Guard frame right now. I've got the caveman frame from Mike Escamilla. So like, I'm into it. Yeah. Do something cool. I'll buy it.
I like it. I like you're relatively like new school rider to be like so in touch and with the old school.
Hey man, I think that's what 100 podcasts does, you know? This next one comes in from John. He says, tell a story about the day you rode the slab in Maryland. And then he put dash the dude in the yellow shirt in the background of the wall ride to downwhip photo.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a good day. Like the slab is a DIY spot. I think mostly built by skaters, maybe some BMX. I think some BMXers are involved as well. But it's a very, like, I love seeing that type of thing, like where like BMXers and skateboarders are coexisting to create and share a spot. And that's what's happening with the slab in Maryland. And Steve Crandall like hosted a jam there, which I went to, had a great time. And I remember I still can like actually like I know the wall ride to whip he's talking about, and it's probably like it might be the last wall ride to downside whip I've done, and I remember that one feeling like particularly amazing. So it's still like a feeling like I can like imagine in my mind. So yeah, I don't know. That was a fun day, and it's a fun spot, and I love skaters and BMXers coexisting and sharing spots, and especially DIY spots. Like I think Rob DeLecki and like a lot of the local skaters are doing a great job of that with Ninth and Poplar in Philadelphia right now. And it's like a special thing. Like we all share like the same spirit. So it's great when we share a common goal and make it happen.
Definitely, man. DIY parks are always some of the coolest parts of BMX, skateboarding, and kind of action sports in general to me. There's a great DIY park in Montreal called P45, and it's great, man. Like we went there this past summer. I've been there before, but just going there and seeing the the way that they have really brought that park over the last like 10 years or so is pretty wild. And I mean, that you ride FDR. FDR is one of the most popular, DIY parks ever. On top of that, with Burnside, right? Like DIY, I think it's king when it comes to like BMX and skateboarding. It's the top like tier of any kind of park or anything, because it's built by skateboarders, by BMX riders, for skateboarders and BMX riders.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting, like because I mean you're right, like FDR like is a DIY spot, and but it's like almost like it's so massive at this point that it's like hard for me to even like like recall or remember that it really is a DIY spot. Yeah.
FDR is one of the parks that I have always wanted to hit. It's on my bucket list as well, and I am like not too sure how the BMX scene is approached there. Like I don't know what the approval rating from skaters is, because no matter what, there's always going to be that kind of beef, which I think is ridiculous, quite frankly. Like we're all doing the same thing, just on different objects, basically.
Right. No, I think FDR is a little bit of a mixed bag where I think if you go when you're meant to go, and you kind of just use common sense. If you start trying to ride during like a heated skate session, maybe you won't get like an excellent vibe, but there's certainly plenty of times where you'll be unfettered and you can have your session, and it won't be an issue. But I don't think it's necessarily like in the spirit of a shared space as like one of the spots. I mean, granted, we're not talking about the same level of like spot, but like I said, like Rob DeLecki works with a lot of guys at this Ninth and Poplar spot, and it's very much like a shared coexisting space with skateboarders, and there's never a time or a vibe in which like you would feel negativity for being a BMX rider. And if you did, that person is clearly deranged. Yeah, I mean,
it's a tough situation,
Yeah.
Moving on from that, our last listener question comes in from Jillian. You might know her. I don't know if you do or not, but she asks.
She might be right over there.
Maybe. She says, highest Yahtzee score.
Oh, shit. Let me check. Hold up.
Nice.
Hey,
I love it.
Scorecards in here? Well, the last sheet. They're pretty deep here. There's some pretty deep sheets. we're gonna get to this. 270. Oh, 325. Who was that? Well, actually, I have to get this right. So 325. So currently, actually, this might be a little bit of a tearjerker, but the highest score I'm seeing on the current cards is for GP, which is Jim. That's Jillian's grandfather, who, rest in peace, we lost him like roughly a year ago. 385 is the highest score I'm seeing on these cards. So Jillian, it's not you, it's not me, it's GP. He's the current Yahtzee champion. So we have some work to do to dethrone GP. And
I love it.
RIP. Perfect way to end this. But yeah, Yahtzee is a very enjoyable game. I highly recommend it.
I love it.
There you have it.
That's great. Normally I end this off with one last question. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is so meaningful. But our last question is, as someone who has helped shape BMX into what it is today, what are you excited about from the up-and-coming riders of today's generation of BMX?
I think it's just a matter of like keeping the general spirit of BMX alive. Like I mentioned earlier, like, you know, like a few years ago when me and Brian Kaczynski did our uncovered events, which, you know, I think we would both like to revisit at some point now that COVID is settling down and, you know, various things. But I think it's just that spirit, just getting in the car and like going to events and just enjoying friendship and enjoying riding your bike and progression and creativity. And I think it's a really special thing. I mean, I think that like without BMX, I'm scared to think about the person that I might be. And it's allowed me to travel the world and meet people of so many different, diverse backgrounds and you know, like it really opens you up to experience the world, and I think that's super important. So I just want to see that keep happening. You know, I think it's been happening for a long time, and I think it's going to keep happening. And I just want to see people grow and enjoy and experience life because of BMX. And I think I think BMX is a tool to experience the world, and let's keep using it. Let's keep using that tool of BMX.
I love it. There's no better answer to that. Thank you, Van, so much for sitting down with us for episode 100. I hope that I didn't take too much of your time, or, you know, at least that you enjoyed the last 3.5 hours or so.
No, I've had a good time. No, it's been great. It's been great chatting with you. And, you know, I hope that, I hope there's some interesting input in there somewhere, because I feel like I just rambled at times, but hopefully people are interested, and it's enlightening in some manner.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this has been one of our best episodes to date. You know, just getting to sit down and talk to you and hear some backstories on, you know, all the different projects you've been involved in, and you're really diving deep into the mind of you know, one of the biggest pro BMX riders of all time is always an incredible experience. And that is no different from today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, keep in touch. And if you're ever in Philadelphia, let me know. And hopefully I'll be back in Canada at some point.
Absolutely. If you're ever planning on coming to Canada, just let me know, because I would 100% be willing to take work off for however long, and we will just go and ride, and it'll be great. And yeah, I'll make sure that it's an incredible experience. So here we are, 100 episodes later. It's pretty wild to think about when I first started this podcast. You know, it was, I guess, probably about 3 years ago. And before that, I had done, you know, a couple episodes of like a test podcast almost, you know, just kind of see if the format would make sense. And then when I finally fully committed to this, it was a big step for me. And it was something that I had just kind of finished the full length video, and I needed a creative outlet. And at the time, I didn't really take it too seriously. I think in the first year or so, there was only 10 or 13 episodes. And then after that, I kind of went and really took it seriously and really wanted to push it to the next level and just learn so much more about BMX, and something that I have loved since I got started in it. And, you know, at the time, I don't think I would have realized that it would have gone this far. I think I had just kind of looked at it as, this is something that I'm going to have some fun doing. I'm going to talk to my friends, and, you know, maybe we'll talk to a few other people, but, you know, we just talked to Van Homan, and we've talked to Mike Aiken, and we've talked to Brian Chikinski. We've talked to Matt Beringer. We've talked to Drew Bazanson. We've talked to all of the, you know, core people that I've absolutely loved since day one within BMX. Some of the people that I've looked up to my entire life. And the list of names is ridiculous at this point. It's pretty wild to think that some of the people that I've always looked up to have supported me so much through this. And on top of that, I have to thank everybody who has taken the time to listen to myself and the guests that I've been lucky enough to have. It's pretty wild to think that just myself, a random dude from Ontario who loves BMX as much as the next person, I guess, maybe more, but has been able to come this far and had conversations with some of the most incredible people, big or small, within the industry, and people who make BMX what it is. And I think the one thing that is so similar about each of these interviews is that we all do it for the same reason, and that we all do this for the love of BMX and the love of being on two wheels and the freedom and everything about BMX itself and the culture. And it's hard to explain to somebody who maybe doesn't know any better, you know? It's been a wild ride so far, and I'm very excited for the next 100 episodes. So with that, thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.